So I was looking for a video to work on and I started thinking about steampunk. I've never really liked steampunk. I've always thought it was a bit silly and lame, but not in the way that's funny, but just the way that's kind of lame. And I was also thinking about YouTube video formats and found myself fixated on the one where people force themselves to watch a bunch of really bad movies and then they talk about it. And so I thought, oh, I can combine those two together. And that's exactly what I did. So I forced myself to watch every steampunk movie so you don't have to. And it turned out okay. It turned out okay, I think. But first, what I want to do is start out with an overview of what steampunk actually is and stuff like that. Steampunk is a science fiction subgenre that was first coined by science fiction writer Kevin Wayne Jeter in 1987. In a letter he wrote to Locus magazine, he said, "Personally, I think Victorian fantasies are going to be the next big thing. As long as we can come up with a fitting collective term for Powers, Blaylock, and myself, something based on the appropriate technology of that era, like steampunk. Perhaps." This was created as a clever tongue-in-cheek variant on the rapidly emerging genre of cyberpunk. Since then, other derivative subgenres have emerged like dieselpunk, atompunk, and solarpunk, and many more. But there's just one small problem, in that these genres don't actually exist. The suffix punk has become a catch-all term used by some people when creating new worlds or environments, and the issue with this is that these subgenres aren't actually punk at all. Let's take a moment and return to the original punk, cyberpunk. While not necessarily the first cyberpunk, Ridley Scott's 1982 film Blade Runner is perhaps best credited for establishing this archetype. The film was based on Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electronic Sheep and shows us a twisted dystopian world. We see a juxtaposition of extreme wealth, technology, and power of the ruling class and the destitution of the lower classes. If worlds like these have such advanced technology, then why isn't any of it being used to help people? This is where the suffix punk comes in. Generally, the protagonists of these stories will be anti-establishment and fight against the system. In some way, or maybe not, I don't know. I guess it depends. The specific world-building details of cyberpunk are well known. Societal collapse, wealth inequality, advanced technology like artificial intelligence or body modification, and most importantly, the setting is always night. Let's bring this back to steampunk and the other punks. What makes subgenres like these anti-establishment? Okay, with steampunk we have steam, which is pretty cool. We have gears, which are pretty cool too. There's brass, and some guys wear top hats and goggles. Those are cool, right? And is there anything else? Airships. There's airships. Unlike cyberpunk, which has its technology intertwined with its narrative, the majority of steampunk works do not utilize its world-building elements to support its supposed theme, and largely keeps these elements as just part of the setting. Moreover, the technology and themes of alleged steampunk works are at odds with its very name. The punk and steampunk should not really be there at all, and in fact it becomes an oxymoron. Jules Verne, often considered the father of science fiction, established himself as one of the most important writers in history. His books have been read by millions, and countless adaptations of his work have been created. The work of Jules Verne, and its derivatives, often inspire a type of wonder and awe for the machines that are in these stories. This process of making a machine by hand was really labor-intensive, but people took pride in their accomplishments. People were happy to make these machines and make them a part of their lives. They had such high hopes for the future, but with hindsight we know that these machines will ultimately be used for evil. On December 7th, 1984, Hayao Miyazaki proposed an outline for what would become the second Studio Ghibli film, Castle in the Sky, or Laputa in Japan. There's an excerpt in his proposal which I find very interesting, and I think it best summarizes the spirit of not only Jules Verne, but what steampunk really should be. The story is set in an era when machines are still exciting and enjoyable, and science does not necessarily make people unhappy. Cyberpunk stories are about dystopias where technology makes people unhappy, while steampunk stories are often utopias where technology should make people happy. These are just guidelines, of course, and you can break them as you wish, but what I want to explain to you is that steampunk is not steampunk and should realistically be called Victorian futurism. And about those other punks, none of them are steampunk either. People just have a habit of slapping the word punk as a suffix onto other words to create their own silly little genres. Atompunk is not punk, solarpunk is not punk, dieselpunk is not punk, punk is not. Wait, what? Okay, I found this one on Reddit. One of the posts shows us an actual game on Steam called Her Name Was Fire, which coined the genre of punk, which is wonderful. This trend in creating superfluous fiction genres is very similar to news agencies using the word gate as a suffix in news scandals. Anyway, most of these subgenres would be better described as futurism or retrofuturism. For example, a franchise like Fallout would not be considered atompunk and would be better described as Cold War retrofuturism because that's what it really is. Another thing worth bringing up is a specific word often used to describe steampunk, and that word is anachronistic. Typically, things in stories, or in general, are arranged in chronological order, and that everything is displayed with an understandable beginning, middle, and end. Wait, wouldn't it be from your perspective beginning, middle, end? Whatever, I'll cut that. Anachronism is a word often specific to storytelling, and it describes something belonging to a period other than that being portrayed. For example, it would be anachronistic to create a story where John F. Kennedy and the Sony PlayStation existed simultaneously. These two things are from different time periods and they can't be used together. It is generally undesirable to introduce anachronistic elements in a period-correct story, as that will undermine the legitimacy of the world and challenge the competency of the creator. Many skilled writers and artists will spend considerable time researching and studying a particular time period to ensure that they don't make any mistakes. But there are also some people who just don't care, and this technique could be called the rule of cool. Today's science and engineering suggests that large mechanized robots are unrealistic and would never be practical. But giant robots are also badass and pulverize giant monsters. I wrote in my script, hell yeah, but I'm not really hyped up to say that, so hell yeah. But placing too much of an emphasis on the rule of cool can risk harming the world building. Viewers may not take the world as seriously as it feels unrealistic. When creating a compelling story, it's important to strike a balance between these two elements. Real life is often very boring, but can be nuanced and interesting. Tiny anime girls fighting with giant swords is cool, but it's obviously unrealistic. For steampunk, the majority of works take place in alternate history where steam-based technology never stopped developing. However, there are numerous real-world limitations that resulted in steam technology largely being abandoned. So, if a person wants to expand upon steam technology in their story, they will likely need to introduce something anachronistic in order to expand the world further. In other words, creating a fantasy. It can be challenging to create a truly nuanced story in a steampunk setting, because doing so will probably result in something similar to the real-life industrial period. So, most of the works that are considered part of this genre are either just fantasy or take place in an equivalent late Victorian era of human history. With that out of the way, I want to establish the format for this video. I've watched over 40 steampunk works, movies, television, anime, all of it. I composed this list of works from various internet forums and websites, but it's important to note that not every single steampunk work has been included. Steampunk is too broad of a genre with too few qualifiers, and as a result, a lot of people mislabel stories as steampunk when they're really not at all. For example, stories that are set in Victorian and industrial eras are commonly misattributed, and too many people see steam or gears and incorrectly label properties as steampunk when they are not. A few of the most commonly misattributed works are included in this review, but there are also a lot that are not. I've created a special rating system for this video as well. There are two metrics. The first one is, literally, how much steam is there? Can I expect to see a colossal mountain of steam, or is there just one little scene that has a teeny tiny amount of steam? This metric ranges from 1 being the lowest and 4 being the highest. The second metric determines what subgenre it is a part of. Is this particular work simply just not steampunk? Is it a derivative of Jules Verne, i.e. Victorian futurism, or is the work most in line with what people would describe as steampunk? Airships, gears, and lots of steam. Neither of these metrics relates to the quality of the work, but I will go into detail about how I feel about each one, what I liked and what I didn't like. There are some spoilers for certain titles in this video, but I try to avoid them as much as possible. Also, in case you noticed, I don't have a teleprompter, so I'm just reading off my monitor for my notes. I hope you don't mind. Okay, let's start. Considered to be based on several works of fiction regarding early space travel, 1902's A Trip to the Moon is considered to be the first science fiction film ever made. I rated this movie as 2 of 4 on the Steamometer, and it is a Jules Verne derivative. The film was directed by George Méliès, and according to Wikipedia, the film had a runtime of 845 feet. Because of the inconsistencies in early filmmaking, there is no official runtime, but it is generally around 12 minutes in length. The film has a cute and simple story. The astronomy club proposes an expedition to the moon, and they build a cannon to fire themselves towards it. When the astronomers get there, they explore the terrain and soon fall asleep, for some reason. And when they awake, they encounter a native species called the Selenites. They have a brief skirmish with their leader and eventually are on the run back to their capsule. One of the astronomers does not make it in time and hangs on for dear life along with the rogue Selenite. They all arrive on Earth safe and sound, and the Selenite becomes a captive, and a welcome ceremony is held for the astronomers. Yippee! The titular scene from this short film is the capsule landing sequence. The capsule lands directly in the moon's eye, and the moon is quite upset. The film is really quite charming and novel from today's perspective. I particularly like the painted sets. What's really wonderful is how passionate these filmmakers were when making this movie. Some versions of this movie are in color. Color film wasn't really around yet, so they had to paint each frame by hand, one by one. It was really labor intensive and produced an interesting display of colors. A lot of silent movies from this time period obviously did not have sound, so many theaters had musicians play along with the film. There's not much to say about this film other than it's pretty neat, so I'm just gonna move on. Skipping ahead a bit in time brings us to Fritz Lang's 1927 film Metropolis. This film is truly excellent, but hardly steampunk. On the Steamometer, I rated this movie as 3 of 4. During the 1920s, an art movement called German Expressionism dominated Germany's art scene. Films made with this art style were extremely stylized and used a number of groundbreaking techniques. The movie generally earned bad reviews when it released. While many people praised the visuals, the film was exceedingly long and the story itself was panned for being overly simplistic and allegedly pro-communist. They're not wrong. Subsequent releases of the film were cut down quite a bit, and then in the 30s and 40s, the Germans had a small problem with the whole communist thing and decided just to get rid of those parts. These cuts and re-edits ultimately left the film in really bad shape. Many of the original negatives were destroyed, which unfortunately was a very common practice at the time. Numerous restoration attempts were made, but it wasn't until 2008 that a 16mm reduction negative was discovered in Argentina. This safety reduction was believed to be created in the 1960s or 70s to safeguard the contents of the original highly flammable nitrate version. In 2010, a complete Metropolis was released. This new version was 148 minutes long, but still 5 minutes shorter than the original version. I love this movie. I wouldn't put it in my top 10 because every Studio Ghibli movie goes there instead, but it's certainly a favorite of mine. Because it's a silent film, there's obviously no dialogue, but there really is an excellent score. It was redone in 2010 along with the film's restoration, and it really stands out. The actors give really good performances too. Brigitte Helm, who plays Maria, performs the part excellently. Her dynamic facial expressions are something you never see in a modern movie. When she plays the motherly steward of the underground, she is calm and reserved, but when she becomes, Super Maria, her expressions become fiendish and devilishly insane. Another thing worth mentioning is how Brigitte Helm was considered to be strikingly beautiful in 1927. She still is, but it's interesting to see how much beauty standards have changed in the past 100 years. The set design is spectacular too. It's quite clearly fake, but I don't think it detracts from the actual quality of the film. My favorite scene visually is in the first act when we see this giant machine thing. There's something truly engaging about seeing a machine in motion and how perfect it is in completing its task. Then the machine turns into Moloch, which in ancient literature is a great power which requires a dire sacrifice. In this case, a reference to the workers' sacrifice to the machine, a sacrifice they are forced to provide to the city of Metropolis, a city which gives nothing back. If you watch the 2010 remastered version, some scenes will suddenly become extremely grainy and cropped in a bizarre way. These scenes are from the aforementioned 16mm safety reduction, and are currently the only known and likely last remaining copies of those particular scenes. My only criticism, similar to the original reviews at the time of its release, is that it is a bit long. The first act is really engaging, but starts to slow down in the second and gets pretty bloated in the third and final act. While I recognize the historical importance of this film, it would definitely benefit from being cut down just a little bit. There are many adaptations of Jules Verne's work, and most of them are pretty much the same thing. The 1950s and 60s saw a type of renaissance for Jules Verne adaptations, and this is one of the most interesting among them. The next film is 1958's The Fabulous World of Jules Verne, or Invention for Destruction. This is a Czechoslovakian movie, and was dubbed into English in 1961 by Warner Brothers. According to Wikipedia, it's the most successful Czech movie ever made. Cool, I guess. On the Steamometer, I rated this movie as 2 of 4 and as a Jules Verne derivative, and I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm gonna have to take a break. The film is primarily based off of Verne's 1896 novel Facing the Flag. The story is about 2 scientists being abducted by pirates and being forced by an evil Count Artagas to create a superweapon to achieve world domination. After going through all of these steampunk movies, it has become very clear that this is an extremely common trope in this subgenre. It's a bit annoying to see the same movie over and over, but whatever. The art direction in this movie is honestly adorable. The film features these wonderfully hand-drawn and painted sets. The techniques used are just so simple, but really quite convincing. Everything is literally just painted cardboard, and despite being black and white, it really is beautiful. My absolute favorite scene is in the first few minutes of the movie. At first, we see a matte painting of a canyon with a bridge and a train going across, which is delightfully simple in its execution. But then it gets even better. The camera cuts to a close-up of the train, and we get to see a marvelously hand-sculpted cardboard train rolling across a bridge. There's real people and real steam, and all the parts in the train move like a real one. In a big Hollywood movie, it's easy to be critical of one for its mistakes because there's so much money involved. But this movie is so small in scale and trying so hard that you can't not appreciate the effort that went into making it. I especially love this little wheel on the train. I like how everyone was just cool with it being a little bit wobbly. They probably could have fixed it, but they chose not to. The music is really good too. It's very happy and joyful and lovely. This movie, and others like it, no doubt had a hand in inspiring filmmakers like Wes Anderson and his films. I don't really have anything negative to say about this movie. It's nothing special as far as the story goes. The only reason to really watch it is for the unique set design and animation. So if you love those things, it's definitely worth watching. It's a bit obscure to get a hold of though, so good luck. Our next film is 1961's Master of the World. I'll rate this movie as moderately steamy and is another Jules Verne derivative. This film is pretty boring. If you've never seen a Hollywood movie from this time period, you're really not missing out on anything. They're all awful. These movies were very talky. They had a lot of characters and a lot of dialogue, but despite all this talking, they never really said anything of interest. Most of these movies were made to be played in the background of drive-in movie theaters, while young men and women made out in the car, which is something I can't relate to. Also, the majority of these stupid movies have some really dumb subtext about how communism is evil and America is great, which is especially egregious in this film, but more on that in a moment. This film has pretty much the same story as the last one, but instead of an island, it's an airship. The movie opens on a documentary about planes, for some reason. Then the movie starts, and we find out it takes place in Pennsylvania. It's not looking good so far. After a bunch of nonsense, the main characters are abducted by this evil guy, and they talk to each other a lot. It's really boring. His motivation is that he wants to end war and enforce world peace, which isn't really a supervillain plot at all. Like, that's just a good guy, right? And there's an unintentionally funny moment where they eventually end up in Africa. The villain is so overwhelmed by witnessing the European colonialist expansion into Africa that he collapses from the stress and faints. And the good guys, who we're supposed to be rooting for, apparently, are coincidentally weapons manufacturers, so they have to stop him because world peace is bad for business and they can't sell guns anymore. Like, what the heck? It's like, I know this movie is from the 60s, but like, that's pretty wild. There are a few little details I guess I'll bring up while I'm here. On the airship, they have these odd-looking lanterns. Oil lanterns use oil and fire to create light, so naturally they can be pretty dangerous if they get knocked over. This made it challenging to use them on trains or ships because vibrations or waves will cause it to topple over. The solution to this was to put it on a gimbal. This would allow the lanterns to operate in non-ideal situations and still provide light, and I think they're pretty neat. They also have a lot of shirtless men in high-waisted jeans. If you're into that kind of thing, this movie has a bunch of them. This movie sucks, don't watch it. The next steampunk work is a Japanese animated series from 1978 called Future Boy Conan. This was the first major project that Studio Ghibli's Hayao Miyazaki had the privilege of working on, though it wasn't a Studio Ghibli production and was made by Nippon Animation for NHK Television. I'm trying to say NHK. On the Steamometer, I rated this film as 1 of 4 and is not steampunk. It's a really cute show. The story takes place in the future after a post-apocalyptic event destroys much of humanity, and decades later, humanity has begun to do the same things that got them into trouble in the first place. The main character, Conan, is a boy raised mostly in isolation by his adoptive grandfather, and they live on an island together. A young girl named Lana washes up on shore one day, and she talks about her homeland, a wonderful country called High Harbor. Soon after, we find out that her homeland is being terrorized by soldiers from an emerging empire called Industria. Actually, you know what? I can zoom in on the text. That way I don't have to get so close. Why didn't I do this before? Oh my god. Can you hear this, by the way? They soon land on Conan's island and abduct Lana, and Conan has to go on a trip to save her. Apparently, the Doomsday event happened in 2008, which does date the series a little bit, but also, there is a minor Doomsday event that did happen in 2008, so interesting observation. But then the intro is followed immediately by the most adorable and cute song I've ever heard in my entire life. The animation is okay. It's basically as cheap as it possibly could have been for the time. The background shots are about as immersive as the Rainforest Cafe. The film grain is pretty high, and I doubt it was of very good quality at the time. There is a lot of technology used, but most of it is just whatever weird tech the animators felt like drawing that day. Their technology is more or less similar to ours, and not steampunk. It's a good little series. There's not much to talk about it though, so I'm just gonna move on. Next up, we have Time Bandits from 1981, and it's a banger. I'll rate this movie as moderately steamy and is not steampunk. The greatest thing about this film is that it's rated PG. Why is that so great, you ask? Excellent question, dear viewer. It wasn't until 1984 that PG-13 became a thing. So prior to that, a movie had to be either PG or R-rated. And so as a result, a few wonderful movies that came out that scared children to death, and parents couldn't do anything about it. Unfortunately, a small indie filmmaker by the name of Steven Spielberg created this small film called The Temple of Doom, which unfortunately put an end to PG and the rise of PG-13. The movie is freaking nuts and I love it. This kid is trying to go to sleep and then all of a sudden, these little people with machine guns emerge from this kid's wardrobe, and they just fuck shit up. They drag this kid into an adventure through like different time periods, and they just keep committing crime everywhere they go. They have absolutely no regard for the long-term consequences of messing with time. It's just a masterpiece.
Benson.
This movie isn't steampunk. There are some weird technology bits and bobs here and there, but it's not steampunk. The main evil guy, like, his name is literally just evil. He has this evil industrial lair, and everyone is wearing trash for some reason. I love when Mr. Evil Man's henchmen question him, and he just makes them explode. This movie was written by two members of Monty Python, Michael Palin and Terry Gilliam. It's really funny, though I'm not really sure if kids will find many of these jokes funny.
It's dead.
Dead? No excuse for laying off work.
I distinctly remember watching this movie as a kid, and I was honestly terrified. This is the only spoiler warning I'm going to give you. When the evil guy is defeated at the end of the movie, and he turns into a rock for some reason, and then the rock ends up in his parents' toaster oven for some reason, and the kid sees as parents are about to touch the rock, and the kid is like, "No, Mom, Dad, stop, it's evil!" And then they just blow up, and then the movie ends, and I was terrified for weeks after this. Like, his parents are just gone. They're gone.
It's evil! Don't touch it!
Perfect movie. 11 out of 10. Our next movie is made by the same guy. Oh, my voice cracked. Our next movie is made by the same guy, Terry Gilliam, and is the next movie. These three movies are part of an unofficial trilogy which Gilliam refers to as the Trilogy of Imagination. However, Brazil 1985 takes a different route than terrifying children to death, and that's torturing enemies of the state to death. My voice cracked again. I am losing my voice. We're gonna keep going though. It's fine. This film is loosely based on George Orwell's 1984, but it's a bit derivative.
We shall prevail!
Instead of a carefully constructed satire about authoritarianism, we instead get a modern retelling in the style of a black comedy. I rate this movie as moderately steamy, but it's not steampunk. The story takes place in a bureaucratic and hyper-consumerist dystopia with excessive pollution and weird anachronistic technology. Our main character, Sam, is a lowly government worker, and that's the way he likes it. He has no ambition in life, just like me, and he just wants to go through the day-to-day motions and simply live his life. But he does have one dream. He dreams of himself as a warrior with wings saving a damsel in distress, and he soon discovers that his dream girl is a real girl, and spends the rest of the movie pursuing her. This is one of the funniest movies I have ever seen.
Mistake? We don't make mistakes. Bloody typical. They've gone back to metric without telling us.
But I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. The humor is it's a bit intellectual. Not that you have to be, like, really smart to understand it, but there are a lot of gags that probably won't make any sense unless you're well-read or a bit cynical. Like, it's basically 1984, the movie, but not 1984, the actual movie. Sam's mother is a wealthy socialite who is obsessed with becoming young and beautiful again, and partakes in numerous invasive and bizarre surgery techniques. As she gets younger and younger, men just magnetized to her, and the women of her class wear shoes on their heads, which is a lovely little detail. Sam's mother brings him to this restaurant, which is a wonderful little vignette. This world is so overwhelmingly dystopian that people don't even respond to violence. Terrorist attacks are just really common, but nobody cares, and they just go about their business like nothing happens.
I saw the most wonderful idea for Christmas presents at the chemist.
Like, a bomb just detonated on the other side of the restaurant and nobody cares. The menus are Chinese takeout menus, which is a weird thing to see in a fancy restaurant, and they're really thick, probably because they had to use, like, really big, like, bulbs to fit into the menus. I'm all for it, though. I love pictures on menus. I love the technology in this movie. It's all old crap and garbage thrown together to make working technology. All the TVs and monitors are, like, really tiny, and, like really comically small, so they have to use these enormous magnifying glasses to make the screens actually usable. There's this weird robot guy who has like a billion useless attachments. All the cars are either super tiny or gargantuan in size. Every building, even the fancy posh ones, have dozens of ominous looking industrial pipes going in each and every direction. Everything has vacuum tubes in them for some reason. I really like vacuum tubes. I think they're pretty cool. I actually have one, or two, or three. Let me show you them. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. Here it is. It's a vacuum tube. I don't know if it's in focus or not. This is a tiny one. This is I'm out of breath, hold on. 6H23N. I don't know what this does. Here. Oh god! Oh god! I meant to throw that on the bed. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to do that, but not... My absolute favorite part of the movie is when Sam's climate control system breaks down and his apartment gets really hot. He reports this immediately, but the bureaucratic system he calls into isn't operating at that hour, so he's out of luck. A few moments later, a psycho with a gun breaks into his home, and we find out he's a clandestine vigilante that fixes people's air conditioners illegally. He cracks open the climate control panel, and like a Brazilian pipes and wires fall out, and there's this freaking bagpipe.
Well, yes and no. Officially, only Central Service operatives are supposed to touch the stuff. Would you hold this, please?
That's expanding and contracting, and it's so freaking weird and freaky, and I love it. It's perfect. I wish there was more, but there's not. The dream sequences are fun, too. Oh, I'm rolling around a lot. These floors aren't level. Landlord special. The dream sequences are a lot of fun too. There's one in particular that I love where Sam is forced to fight an enormous samurai. It's easy to miss it, but the actual blades of the samurai armor are made up of little daughter boards with lots of little electronic components soldered on. It's a wonderful little detail and really shows the effort that went into making this movie. The movie is named after the 1939 Ari Barroso, famous song Watercolor of Brazil. I think the name Brazil just isn't very good, and it's weird to recommend to people because it isn't that just the name of a country? One of the alternative names for the movie, which I think would have been significantly better, is 1984 and a Half, which references not only George Orwell's novel, but also the art house comedy film 8 and a Half. However, Brazil was released in 1985, and importantly, another film titled 1984 released the year prior. One thing that I didn't really like about this movie is that it really slows down in the middle of the second act. The film becomes a generic 1980s action movie with car chases and big action scenes. They're all good scenes, but they don't really vibe well with the comedy. Perfect movie. 12 out of 10. Our next film is called Castle in the Sky, the second movie to be released by Topcraft, a Japanese animation studio that previously created the greatest movie ever made, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. The next film they released, My Neighbor Totoro, earned the studio their iconic logo and the more recognizable name Studio Ghibli. I really wanted the Nausicaa and Princess Mononoke posters, but they were sold out, and so I had to settle for Totoro and The Wind Rises. I tried printing out these... Wait, where are they? They're over here? They're right here. I tried printing out these like 4x6 ones. Oh, here's my dog. Isn't he cute? Look at, there's another one. Oh, isn't he adorable? I tried printing out these 4x6 ones, but they didn't really work. Like, look at this one. There's no like big poster of this one. It's really cool. And there's also this one, a watercolor, and this one, but they're tiny. Oh, I also bought this guy. Look at him. It's Totoro. On the listing, he was called Big Totoro. And I thought, wow, $20 for Big Totoro? That's a good price. And then it got here, and I was like, this isn't Big Totoro. I mean, look at him. He's not big. He's tiny. I can eat him. Oh. I rated this movie as 4 of 4 and is a certified hot and steamy film and is another Jules Verne derivative. This movie has a lot of steam and gears and airship and magic too, which is pretty cool. The story is about a young girl named Sheeta who is being chased simultaneously by government agents and pirates, both with their own objectives. She encounters a young boy named Pazu who helps her on her journey to discover her past and the mystery surrounding her family's necklace. Their journey leads them to an ancient floating city of Laputa, which is depicted in the third part of the book Gulliver's Travels. I feel that among Studio Ghibli films, that this one is the one that is most often forgotten. Maybe not a film that deserves to be forgotten, but more of just not remembered that well. That's kind of the same thing. It's sandwiched between two great works. Nausicaa is Miyazaki's magnum opus, and My Neighbor Totoro is the Ghibli movie. Castle in the Sky is just a good movie. There's nothing bad about it, but it doesn't really have anything that makes it stand out among the other Ghibli films. There are a lot of really interesting set pieces in this movie that create a lot of really interesting storytelling. It's hard to pick a favorite, but I like the castle scene a lot. Shida is abducted by government agents and is brought to a military stronghold, and Pazu has no choice but to team up with the pirates in order to rescue Shida. There is a lot of wonderful animation in this scene, a highlight of which is the laser beams created by the robot and the subsequent there we go. If you notice closely, there's a bit of an odd distortion being applied to this scene, and what Ghibli did to achieve this was to apply a layer of rippled glass on top of the actual frame. Miyazaki's father was a pretty big wheel down at the cracker factory and oversaw fighter plane manufacturing during World War II. This first-hand experience inspired Miyazaki with a lifelong passion for aircraft, and this movie really let him go hog wild. Well, actually, Porco Rosso was the movie where he went hog wild, so I guess I'm wrong, and he didn't go hog wild quite yet. Let's move on. There are a lot of really neat flying machines in this movie. The opening credits scene has a lot of really interesting designs, but many of these did not end up in the film as they were too unrealistic, and Miyazaki wanted to keep the technology believable. This scene also utilizes really neat art design that looks like colorized but desaturized manga. The military also has this really cool warship too, with lots of big guns and weird propeller blades. All the women in this movie are stacked. I mean, like, there's only two, but they're both really voluptuous. There's a MILF and a GILF, with the latter being the leader of a pirate game named Dola. Also, there's a scene in this movie which is a bit controversial. When Shita and Pazu sail off to find Laputa, Dola puts them to work. Pazu helps the engineer with the ship's engine, and Shita is sent to work in the kitchen. Dola's boys all see Shita as a cutie patootie, so they sneak their way into the kitchen, offering to help Shita, but with the sneaky implication that they are interested in romancing her. This is problematic because she's about 13, while the men are men. Like, they're all around 20 to 30 years old, so it's a bit creepy. It's a bit odd to see this kind of stuff in a Ghibli movie, considering Miyazaki is pretty adamantly opposed to the sexualization of his characters. So I guess it was right after this movie that he really started cracking down on his horny animators. The score for this film is really excellent too. Joe Hisashi was a composer, and he really is a wonderful musician. None of the music really stands out, but it's a great all-rounder. It has that pre-digital analog tape sound to it, which in other words means that there isn't much dynamic range. I like it though. I really love tape. I own a bunch of worthless old tape players. I think they're pretty cool until you have to fix them, and oh, also, the English dub has none other than Star Wars man himself, Mark Hamill. He voices Pazu, and it's pretty okay. I really don't like dubs that much. I always do subs. Subs are better. Our next film was made in a country which no longer exists. This is a Soviet film from 1986 called Kinza-za. On the steamometer, I rated this film as 2 of 4 for being moderately steamy, but is not steampunk. The film is about 2 Russian guys who approach an odd-looking homeless person who looks like he needs some help. The odd man has an odd object, and the 2 men mistakenly touch this odd object and end up in an odd place, which they soon find out is an odd alien planet. These 2 men encounter a number of very strange aliens, or just humans really, and they try to find their way home. The technology in this film is really weird. Like, it's almost not even technology at all, the way we know it. It's just really bizarre and weird and nondescript. The machines are steampunk, kinda. At least in terms of visuals. An important fuel source, or currency, I'm not sure which, is a flammable material on the heads of matches, which, fortunately, the main character guy just happens to have on him. Like an ultra-valuable resource for this dystopian planet, but overwhelmingly common on Earth. It's an interesting contrast. I don't know Russian, but the vocabulary used to describe these machines is clearly nonsense or just gibberish, but more on that in a moment. The film is really cheap. This may be one of the cheapest movies I've ever seen for this genre that doesn't just have people walking around in the woods at night. But with that said, its overwhelming cheapness doesn't really detract from the film at all. The flying spacecraft are clearly strung up by fishing strings when they are flying, but I personally don't find it much of an issue. Much like The Fabulous World of Jules Verne, this movie just feels like people trying to do their best with what they have, and they make a compelling story out of it. Every set piece is just old crap rotting in the desert. old boats, old amusement park rides, old garbage. It's quintessential Soviet decay. I love the vibe, honestly. Towards the end of the movie, we're introduced to this weird thing, which is the last breath of Mr. Pezha. Whatever that means. Let's talk a bit more about the story. The major theme of this movie is actually racism. There's an excellent episode of Star Trek The Next Generation in Season 5 called Darmok. In this episode, Captain Picard and his crew try to communicate with an alien species that has an enigmatic language that their universal translator cannot translate. And over the course of the episode, as an audience, we begin to learn this alien language with the characters, and it's a really beautiful episode, and it's really an amazing story about overcoming adversity and communicating with people who you don't share the same language with.
Darmok. And Jalad. At Tanagra.
Kinzaza is the complete opposite of this episode. Instead of learning about the importance of communicating with other cultures, the two Earthmen are forced to become ranked competitive League of Legends players and are demanded to participate in this convoluted society of systemic racism. Like, the two guys start out, like, pretty level-headed, and as the show goes on, they just become, like, really racist, like comically racist. The movie has a bunch of made-up words, like, you don't need to know Russian to understand it. Not that you would anyway, necessarily. The aliens use the words ku and ku. They only tell you the meaning of one of these. The movie is intentionally designed to be needlessly convoluted and stupid, exactly like real-life racism. The film also touches on themes of capitalism and dominance and how they relate to racism as well. The film is very much a subtle propaganda movie that is quite clearly anti-American, though they never expressly say it. For those who have better things to do, it's against the very nature of communism to discriminate against people in any form. There are no superiors or inferiors to you, everyone is just comrade. Well, in theory anyway. In practice, some comrades are more equal than others.
Shall prevail.
In America in 1986, they only recently concluded the civil rights movement, but still significantly suffered from systemic racism, in which this movie pokes fun at. Furthermore, it's interesting to see an anti-capitalist movie from actual anti-capitalists. Many Hollywood movies that are supposedly anti-capitalist are inherently flawed because they're made by Hollywood, which is a for-profit industry. So each and every film needs to be commercially successful in order to generate a profit. In contrast, Soviet films were almost entirely state-funded. Because profit wasn't really a concern, filmmakers were able to express themselves however they wanted. Kind of. It's complicated. This led to a number of really unusual films and animated films that are really, really strange. I really like the music and the sounds in this movie. It's just made out of, like, and there's, like, tubas, and it's trash, terrible instruments. It's perfect. I love it. The music is also very important to this story. The two main characters end up in a situation where the only way they can get more money is by standing in a tiny cage and performing music, hoping that passers-by will throw them a few space bucks. And this helps reinforce the stupidity of capitalism and racism by showing what you have to do to be successful in a capitalist environment. Forcing yourself into a tiny cage and performing, hoping that someone will notice you, hoping that you won't have to go back to your dead-end job, hoping that maybe they'll like and subscribe and smash that bell icon. Subscribe if you want to. I'd appreciate it. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen is the third film in the aforementioned trilogy of imagination. On the Steamometer, I rated this movie as 2 of 4, moderately steamy, and is not steampunk. Moreover, this movie is more of a historical fantasy with steampunk elements rather than a proper science fiction film. Baron Munchausen is a fictional German nobleman created by the writer Rudolf Erich Rasp in his 1785 book, Baron Munchausen's narrative of his marvelous travels and campaigns in Russia, and is loosely based on the real person with the name, Baron Hieronymus Karl Friedrich Freyer von Munchausen. really rolls off the tongue. Baron Munchausen was at one time a quite prominent fictional character in literature, stage plays, and film, though in recent years the character has become significantly less popular, and this is likely in part to the proliferation of new original characters and stories that are more relevant to people today, like Madame Web. This 1988 film is a bit of a mess. The structure of the film is all over the place and has like 3 different movies happening all at the same time. It's not bad, but a bit confusing. The first act of the movie takes forever to actually get going and constantly gets sidetracked with non-relevant characters and information. Baron Munchausen himself is like 1,000 years old, and as the story explains, he has a long history of magical journeys behind him, so hopping into this movie without being acquainted with any of the background behind his character is a bit jarring, I think. One thing that really stood out to me was that this movie felt a lot like a Dungeons & Dragons story. There's a lot of really weird characters with really weird traits, and unusual and magical places, dangerous situations that require fantastical solutions. There's a really interesting vignette which doesn't really have much purpose in the story, but is interesting in its own way, when a young Baron Munchausen is granted access to the harem of the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. Munchausen is disappointed by the wine offered by the Sultan and offers him a challenge, that he can procure a bottle of wine from Vienna over 1,000 miles away in under 1 hour, and if he cannot procure one, then Munchausen will lose his head. The Sultan, confident in that this cannot be accomplished, offers all the treasure in his treasury that the strongest man can carry. We are then introduced to a D&D group of really weird characters, specifically this guy, which has a ball and chain attached to both of his legs. He detaches them from his enormous, skull-crushing thighs and zooms off like a Looney Tunes character. I wish the entire movie was like this, but unfortunately we don't really get that much of it. Pretty much the only steampunk part of this movie is over an hour in. We are introduced to a new setting where these dwarves manufacture super weapons. The set design is nice, but not really steampunk. There are a few other times when there's a bunch of steam, because why not? I don't know why this movie is in the steampunk category, but there it is. Watch it if you want. It's a good D&D movie, I guess.
Oh, we're all extremely large and strong here.
Our next steampunk work is an anime series with the title Nadia, the Secret of Blue Water. This is another Jules Verne derivative story with lots of airships and steam-powered vehicles, and on the steamometer I rated this as 2 of 4, moderately steamy. Our main characters in the story are a nerd with glasses and a jungle dancer? Okay, we have to address this right away. There's a bit of racism.
Looks like you've come a long way too. Where are you from? Is it India?
I'm sorry, but I won't give such personal information to a complete stranger.
Oh, good. You understood what I was saying.
I've only watched the first few episodes of this anime, but there is more than just one instance of racism.
Really? So I don't suppose you find my dark skin funny?
Oh, no!
The latter 2 episodes I watched never brought it up, so maybe it gets better, but it's really not the best. They slightly sanitize this racism in the dub, but oh boy, does it get a lot worse in the sub. Nadia, the female protagonist, works for a circus as a jungle dancer and is in debt to the circus director, and she literally calls him Master!
今日の時間だ。さっさと着替えんか。
団長さん、今日は出たくないの。
And the dub has her refer to him as Sir, which I guess it's better.
It's showtime. Get your costume on.
I'm sorry, sir.
I don't know if she literally calls him Master, but that's what the subtitle says in the Japanese sub. If you speak Japanese, leave a comment below on the context of the scene, maybe, if anybody's watching. Are you watching, Totoro?
Did you remember to eat your breakfast this morning, Nadia?
Yes.
If you eat my food, you'll earn it by performing.
The next episode, we see this nerd boy's aunt, and she won't let him bring her into the house because, and I quote, she's a colored girl.
And I was hoping she could stay here with us.
Oh, really? Where did you find her? Jean Rockwell-Teague. Please, do you expect me to take in a stranger? Did you notice her skin? And with that mangy animal with her, who knows what trouble she'll cause? And now you come, hand in hand, asking me to take in some dark-skinned Ethan and her frightening pet?
Normally, I would say it's a product of its time, but this show came out in the 1990s, so Really, it's just a product of Japan.
I've already paid the nice man for your care and feeding.
Help, Master!
There's nothing he can do.
Other than that, though, the show is pretty good. Apparently, this show was originally pitched in the 1970s by the big cheese himself, Hayao Miyazaki. Many of the visual elements in this anime were reused by Miyazaki into other projects like Future Boy Conan and Castle in the Sky. If you watched all the Ghibli movies and need something new, this might be a good option for you. If you can get past the racism. This show is loosely based on the Jules Verne story 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Much of the technology is part of the early industrial period, but does take a few artistic liberties. The bad guys have this weird red machine thing.
I wonder who could have invented such an incredible machine.
That would be me!
There isn't too much actual steam in the show, but there's lots of mecha, which I like. The animation is really pretty. The show doesn't look or feel too cheap, and must have been quite a high-budget show for its time. I really like the design of this battleship, the white hull with its brass conning tower and turrets, plus the red trim dividing the different decks. I also love the way the battleship is animated. It's just 3 layers on top of each other, moving at different speeds to give the illusion of depth. It's a really simple technique, but effective, and there are bugs in here. I get him? I didn't get him. However, the animation is not as detailed or as passionate as what Studio Ghibli was making at the same time. This plane, for example, is pretty rigid and doesn't really flex that much. Miyazaki... There is a bug right on top of the lens. He just flew away. Miyazaki coined the term plastic model, which refers to the way that certain mecha and machines are animated in anime, where they're mostly static and don't move that much. And what Miyazaki wants to do, or likes to do, is to make them look kind of a bit more flexible, because that's how they would actually look in real life, with the bending and flexing and stuff. The evil villain in the show is a woman that kind of looks like the anime version of Jessica Rabbit. She's like really hot. I don't know about you, but I love a woman in uniform. I feel like they probably designed her this way to appeal to older audiences and boost ratings. Unlike Miyazaki's Future Boy Conan, this anime feels a bit more mature and less childish, and the animation is complex enough that older audiences don't really get bored quickly. The dub is absolutely awful. It may be one of the worst dubs I have ever heard.
You want to go back to Africa, don't you?
Africa. I hope you slept well!
Yes!
20,000 francs.
It honestly feels like Animal Soccer World, which is another weird one.
Parties? Where? Can I sell my candy somewhere? There is no party. Oh.
The guy who does the Nerd Boy's voice does a fake French accent, which is unbearable.
Every girl loves the gift of flowers.
There are a lot of weird, scratchy sounds anytime anybody talks.
He's probably out there waiting for you.
I have no doubt that my father's alive.
It doesn't bother me personally because I like subs better, and watching the sub also has the added benefit of listening to anime Jessica Rabbit's voice, which again, is really hot.
No. いえ、私のためにあるんですぜ。
11 out of 10. Perfect. It is a bit racist. Maybe just 10 out of 10.
Nadia?
Yes, Sean?
Would you mind telling me how much you weigh?
The next steampunk work is a segment from a 3-part animated anthology film titled Memories. The first short film, Magnetic Rose, and the second one, Stink Bomb, are excellent, but not really steampunk, so we're gonna skip over those. The best is saved for last. The final animated short film is titled Cannon Fodder, and what a wonderful animation this is. On the Steamometer, I rated this as a maximum of hot and steamy, and is the first film so far to be truly steampunk. Cannon Fodder is a brief excursion into the lives of a 3-member family. They live in a dystopian city of endless war, which prominently features a legion of enormous cannons built into the very homes they live in. The boy's story is about him going to school and dreaming of operating the largest artillery piece in the city. The boy's father is one of the thousands of workers required to support the cannon, and his mother works in a factory manufacturing shells for the city's artillery. The animation utilizes a technique more commonly used in live action, the one-shot. This technique is the process of continually shooting with a single camera and never cutting away to another one, allowing the scene to flow perpetually. This technique is extremely complicated and labor-intensive to perform correctly, as a single mistake will ruin the entire take. In animation, the one-shot isn't quite as prestigious, as there are quite a few opportunities to correct any mistakes, so there's a lot less at stake. Cannon Fodder utilizes an invisible camera that moves freely from one location to another, and it's really wonderful to watch it in motion. The art design in this short film is something I've never seen before from Japanese animation. The overwhelming majority of Japanese animation is just anime, and to be blunt, is cheap crap designed to sell toys and merchandise. But cannon fodder is something special. It's a treat, something you can only give yourself occasionally, otherwise you'll be overwhelmed and dulled by the nuanced flavors and textures. Like this licorice I have here. It's like Lacquerades by Bolo. It's really nice and tasty, but kind of pricey, so you can't eat it that often. There's also none in here, so I just have to smell it. Oh my god, it's so good. Why did I do that? The short film is just as long as it needs to be, and if it were any longer, it probably wouldn't really work that well. The soundtrack for Memories is really lovely too. Magnetic Rose utilizes an entire orchestra for its score, which I like to listen to from time to time. Cannon Fodder has excellent music too, but the mastering is awful. The sound files for Cannon Fodder are really compressed and have almost no dynamic range, which is such a shame because there are a few good tracks on there. My favorite of which is titled The Cannon's Fanfare, which is the song that plays during the cannon's loading sequence. It's not like a masterpiece or anything, even if it was mastered well, but my ADHD brain loves it. And there's just one more song I want to talk about too. If nothing else dates this movie to the 90s, then this song does. Like, I don't think there's a genre of music more distinct than 90s techno. I may go so far in saying that this is the most 90s techno song I've ever heard in my life. When I was growing up, my parents often listened to music like this, so it was a really strange and bizarre feeling to suddenly be threatened by 90s techno. Not even 1995's Hackers soundtrack can compete with this. Small world-building details in this are really good too. The written language utilizes an extremely stylized font which contains a medley of European characters and a few fictional ones too. Despite the complexity of the letters in this font, it's still English, and there's lots of really interesting world-building details in this font. A detail that I really like is that instead of a normal letter S, they use a Stützstaffel SS symbol, which helps support the world building of an authoritarian dystopian society that they live in. I love when movies or shows demonstrate the labor required to keep these machines alive. This short shows us the monstrous quantity of workers required to maintain and operate a cannon as large as this. Hundreds, if not thousands of people, not to mention the colossal logistics effort and manufacturing effort to supply this cannon with the resources necessary in order for it to fire. In this world, we're shown that it's a great privilege to be the one to fire the cannon. This individual is shown to be wearing a type of late Prussian uniform, which is a time and region not really seen that much in fiction. Memories was really fun to watch, and you'll probably have fun watching it too. So watch it after this video. And like and subscribe. I'm back again. Not that you were aware that I left. A day has passed, and I'm wearing a different shirt. Let's continue. The past few movies have been great and all, but none of them were really steampunk. Sure, Cannon Fodder was steamy, but everything in that world made sense, and steampunk isn't supposed to make sense. Well, we're finally getting one, and it's a masterpiece of confusion. 1995's The City of Lost Children was made by a lunatic, and I love it. This movie is rated at a maximum of 4/4 and is hot and steamy. 100% steamy. Where do I even begin? There's this evil bad guy called Crank, which is a really good villain name, I think. He can't dream or whatever, so he has to abduct children and steal their dreams. And then there's this other guy who's a strongman, and his little brother gets abducted by steampunk Borg. And then he encounters a crack team of orphans who are also criminal masterminds. There are these two weird and creepy twins who run the orphanage. There's a brain in a jar, and a bunch of clones of these guys, and the steampunk Borg are part of a weird cult thing. I don't know. The evil bad guy lives in the evil lair. Everyone in the town is kind of evil too. And the worst part of all is that everyone's French. I didn't breathe the entire time during that. I don't know how I had the air capacity. This movie was made by Marc Caro and Jean-Pierre Jeunet, the latter of which is best known in America for directing 1997's Alien Resurrection. However, neither of them enjoyed working with Hollywood, so Alien Resurrection was the first and only Hollywood film they ever made. By design, the story is all over the place and doesn't take itself too seriously. The story, in quotes, is just an excuse to show us this world and these insane characters, and they are all insane. The twins I mentioned earlier all finish each other's sentences, which is a bit unsettling. The clones are all really, really stupid and are obsessed with finding out who the original is. There's a submarine guy, he's a nut job. They all have crazy facial expressions and talk in bizarre ways. The children all talk like adults, the adults all talk like children, and the town that everyone lives in is an odd seaside town, which is stuck in a perpetual nighttime, which really does add to the atmosphere of the film. But everything is just insane. My favorite scene is that, for no particular reason whatsoever, other than to move the story forward, is that a crab falls from the ceiling, lands on a handle which activates an air hose, which then blows these hanging cans from the ceiling down onto an alarm clock, which forces this weird sailor guy to wake up and bang his head, which then leads to this canister falling down and fracturing, which then allows this awful 90s CGI gas to escape and give everyone in the town bad dreams or something. Then, when this little girl gets the bad dream gas, this allows her to figure out where the kids are all being taken. Another excellent scene is that at one point, one of the steampunk Borg goes wild and starts killing his friends. The steampunk Borg can only see with a monocular implant, apparently, and the crazy steampunk Borg guy disconnects the first guy's monocular, removes the eyepiece, and then just stabs him in the eye. I thought it couldn't get better than that, but for the next guy he kills, he likewise disconnects his victim's monocular, but then plugs in the cable into his own monocular, which allows the victim to see himself be murdered from the murderer's perspective. It's diabolical. The movie uses a lot of weird filmmaking techniques that really make the environment creepy and unsettling. It's just very weird. This movie is nuts. Watch it, or else. Next movie is a stinker. I know some people like it, but I just can't stand it. 1999's Wild Wild West is definitely steampunk, but hardly entertaining. On the Steamometer, I rated this as 3 of 4 getting steamy. This movie is a stereotypical late 90s Hollywood comedy film, and this movie had a $170 million production budget? For what? A giant enemy spider? I was so bored watching it. Nothing happened. It's just stupid, dated, unfunny comedy. Will Smith plays Will Smith, which I guess is fine for a movie set in New York City, but doesn't really work for a Western movie. This is another Jules Verne derivative-ish, where we have an evil scientist guy who wants to take over the world. Will Smith and his friend, not Will Smith, have to take him down, yada yada. There's a big steampunk spider, which is cool, I guess. Late-breaking update. I found in an antique store nearby, or kind of nearby, I found this, canister of film from, I guess, when they were shipping it out, theatrically to, different theaters, and I couldn't find Wild West in there, but I think there's a bunch of trailers in here. You can see the audio track on the side. I don't know what movie this is. And if you want it, it's all yours. You just have to go to the antique store. I don't remember where it was, though, so I don't know. 2001, a good year for America. Our next film is our first and only Disney movie, Atlantis: The Lost Empire. On the Steamometer, I rated this film as 2 of 4 for being moderately steamy, and is another Jules Verne derivative. This film is often forgotten, no doubt because it ends up slumped together with the other crap Disney was making towards the end of the Disney Renaissance. I suppose it does belong there in that enclave. The movie has its moments, but it's largely uneventful.
It must have taken thousands of years to carve this thing.
In my opinion, it's a movie that Disney should never have made. Its premise is too mature and frankly too interesting for mass market appeal. Disney had to strike a balance between childish wonder and nuanced storytelling, but you just can't do both of these in the same movie. Treasure Planet tried to do the same thing, and it also didn't do very good. Both of these movies are half an hour too short, no doubt a result of Hollywood's insistence that all films be no greater than 90 minutes in length to maximize theatrical profits. This is another 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea remake. The film has a lot of cool early industrial technology. I'm particularly there we go, I said it. I'm particularly fond of this big drill machine. It doesn't get quite enough screen time, but of the few moments in the film where it is used, it's fun for the 45 seconds it's used. There was a shortly lived LEGO theme called Power Miners, which as a kid I loved a lot, but I was never able to get a set of one. And in hindsight, these sets weren't of very good quality. They're pretty cheap and simplistic, but now my favorite Space Dwarf game lets me live out these childhood dreams and kill giant space bugs in the process. Shout out to Paul Verhoeven for creating my favorite science fiction subgenre, giant space bugs as an allegory for anti-fascist rhetoric.
Rico! You know what to do! Yes, sir!
There's a big boat submarine thing in the beginning of the movie, but they're only there for 5 minutes, so whatever, who cares? Then they end up in fantasy magical land and all the cool mecha gets pushed aside for magic stuff. It's annoying. I like my machines. There are a lot of really interesting characters in this movie, or at least that's what I would say if they had more time to expand on the story. The characters include Molman Jones, Dynamite Dude, Sassy Mechanic Girl, Big Doctor Guy, The General from General Auto Insurance, Old Gossip Lady, Fallout New Vegas Good Springs Guy, Sophisticated Blonde Lady, Old Wisdom Man, Other Old Guy, Rule 34 Girl, and Milo the Nerd. The animation in this movie is really lovely, and I think it's something special. The overwhelming majority of Disney animated films are, of course, princess movies, and these are all well and good, but the animation fidelity is locked into a movie that is just made for little kids. Sleeping Beauty is a really beautiful film, but only if you jump around to all the pretty parts and skip the story. So seeing these animated techniques be applied to a story that isn't for kids is kind of nice. Much like Ken and Fodder's not anime aesthetic, Disney Mecha is a rare treat. Apparently, this film received some controversy when it released due to its similarity of the aforementioned Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water.
How much do you weigh?
It's very rude to ask a lady a question like that.
Nadia's production team, Gainax, called to sue for plagiarism, but their parent company NHK and Toho refused to do so. In a 2000 interview with a Gainax worker, Hiroyuki Yamaga... Yamaga? It's not Yamaha. Yamaga. Hiroyuki Yamaga. Yep. Yamaga! It's Yamaga! We actually tried to get NHK to pick a fight with Disney, but even the National Television Network of Japan didn't dare to mess with Disney and their lawyers. We actually did say that, but we wouldn't actually take them to court. We'd be so terrified about what they would do to them in return that we didn't dare. Disney never formally responded to these claims, but Atlantis co-director Kirk Wise said later that he had never heard of Nadia until long after they finished working on the movie. In addition, Lee Zion from Anime News Network wrote at the end of his article, "There are too many similarities not connected with 20,000 Leagues for the whole thing to be a coincidence. It's reassuring to see that fear of Disney's lawyers is an international horror. Thanks, Disney." How do I write vomit into a script? 2001's Metropolis is a stinker. I give this movie a rating of 1 of 4, little to no steam, and is not steampunk either. This animated movie is not a retelling of Fritz Lang's 1927 film, but is actually based on the 1949 manga of the same name. The manga artist, Osamu Tezuka, see, I did that one right. I didn't even practice that one, I just came across that line naturally, stated that he had only seen a single still image of the film in a magazine at the time of creating his manga back in 1949. 1,000 years later, a bunch of guys made it into a movie. While the original 1949 manga is allegedly not similar to Fritz Lang's 1927 Metropolis, this 2001 movie is. It's mostly a retelling, but instead of the lower class working themselves to death to support Metropolis, everyone is just unemployed because robots took everyone's jobs. I went to school to be a writer. Watching it for the first time, I started to get this feeling that it kind of felt like Akira. Why does it feel like Akira? And it's probably because it was written by the same guy. Metropolis utilized a different production studio than Akira, and I don't know enough about the little details of animation to go into detail. It says specifics. The animation has the same type of motion and feeling as Akira. They both have an ugly, hazy, desaturated filter, which is layered on top of almost all the scenes. I'm not sure if there's a better release of this film, but the Blu-ray version is not well mastered. There's a lot of film grain, and the dark scenes are often unviewable. The story isn't complicated to understand, it's pretty much just Fritz Lang's version, but I don't really know what's going on though. Or what anyone's doing, or why they're doing it. The dialogue is weird and bizarre. I got so confused watching the subtitled version that I had to switch to the dub. Not that it helped much at all, actually. Like, the dialogue is so bad that even when they literally just directly explain to you what's happening in every single scene, I still have no idea what's going on. I think the blue robot character is the worst offender.
I'm Keiichi. How do you do?
My serial number's 803DRP DM4973C. Nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
every single scene he is in has him explain to our main characters and to us how the world of Metropolis works and what's happening in the story.
Metropolis is a city of levels with tight transit controls. I have police clearance, but most robots are marked with a zone code. They're not allowed to surface.
So that robot had a mark.
That's correct, young man. Each block has a gate like this, but there are also secret passages.
Visually, the character design is abnormal for a modern Japanese animation, and I think it might be considered retro. Early Japanese manga and animation is a subject I'm not too familiar with, but the art style is very similar to a lot of Showa-era comics like Astro Boy and Speed Racer. People in this movie have really strange skin colors, hair colors, and eye colors. The animators seem to struggle to portray anyone other than a light-skinned anime girl. I wonder why. In the original 1949 comic, the Joe Fredersen character was a bird for some reason, but then sometimes isn't. I guess, I don't know. I like how gargantuan his nose is. There's also this side character, general guy. His smug face reminds me of those profile pictures used by Hearts of Iron 4 players who, for some reason, never stop complaining that the game doesn't let you commit war crimes. The editing is weird. Usually editing is a subject not discussed in animation because each and every scene of an animated project is carefully storyboarded in the early stages of the production, with the end result being that no resources are wasted. This is a contrast to a live-action film where they'll likely have some excess footage, or maybe too much excess footage, and they can move it around as they wish to make a narrative of some kind. I think the editor of this movie realized that a lot of the scenes just didn't really make sense and were kind of boring, and he had to spice it up somehow, and the results are interesting.
And without emotions, then we are nothing.
There are a ton of wide shots in this movie that hold for way too long.
Tell me, robot.
They're all industrial cityscapes, which are, again, very boring. There's one particularly egregious scene where the blonde girl is heavenly standing at the precipice. For some reason, it doesn't contribute much to the story and was probably just there to put in the trailer and on the movie poster. I wrote in my notes that this movie feels like a college group project where you have to create a Google slide presentation for the class. Each one of you works on their own separate part, and one poor individual has to sacrifice all their time and effort to reconstruct it into something that needs to be submitted by 11:59 tonight. It's hardly the worst movie I've ever seen. Watch it if you want. You might like it more than me.
We have to be careful. All robots must hide themselves now. A revolution is at hand.
What you say? Revolution?
Our next steampunk thing is an animated series from 2003 called Last Exile. This series is set in the future, I think, and features a lot of neat airships. On the Steamometer, I rated this as 3 of 4 and is steampunk. I only watched the first few episodes and it's quite good. However, the most standout feature, or lack thereof, is the animation itself. Science fiction is a genre that requires a significantly higher budget to correctly portray the environment the story is set in, but much of the animation budget for Last Exile looks to be reserved for a few select scenes and awful 2000 CGI. Many of the exposition scenes, and there are a lot of them, are your typical mostly static images with frequent camera movements. Our two main characters, Boy 1 and Girl 1, drive around in this really oddly designed steampunk spaceship thing. This felt a lot like steampunk pod racing, and in a later episode they do in fact race in other steampunk pods. Now this is pod racing. Yippee! Did they say yippee in Star Wars prequels? I think he says yippee, right? Chat, does he say yippee? There's no one here. It's just my anime girl wallpaper. Hey, gorgeous. The two characters are couriers, which I guess means that this vehicle is an in-universe equivalent to a Ford Econoline. The action scenes with this vehicle aren't really that dramatic. The steampunk Ford Econoline is a bit lame. It hardly compares to the Spike Spiegelmobile, which is superior in many ways. There are many much larger airships as well, and I find the Russian-looking airships to be interesting to look at. They remind me of those weird, wacky World War II tanks that Russia made, like the KV-2. I love the KV-2. It's such a funny-looking tank. It's a cube. The story starts, more or less, with a pre-arranged aerial battle between these Russian guys and the not Russian guys. I say arranged because this factional conflict is being monitored by these guys in this peculiar-looking ship. They are part of a guild and make sure no one does anything tricksy or nefarious, but then it's revealed that they themselves are the tricksy and nefarious ones, and double-cross the Russian guys. The ship-to-ship combat prior to the betrayal of the guilds is an interesting world-building technique I haven't seen used before. While the ships do have large cannons, both sides utilize soldiers arranged in a line formation with steam muskets with steam muskets and fire at each other like in ancient warfare. The side with the fewest casualties win, and is no doubt an excellent method for the ruling parties as it minimizes the loss of expensive warships and instead only focuses on the loss of human life, which is, of course, mostly worthless. The heavily controlled ship-to-ship warfare, presence of a guild monitoring the battle, and the betrayal of the guild feels a lot like Dune, with the Russians being the Atreides and the non-Russians being the dreaded Harkonnens. Oh yeah, there's also this cool guy with a ship who saves the day. Not sure what his deal is. I didn't watch far enough to find out, but he seems like a pretty cool guy. Oh, and one more thing. We need to talk about the opening theme. Remember how I mentioned that the ending of Memories had the most techno song I've ever heard? Well, the song opens with bagpipes? Like in a techno song? Actually, the song is more trance than techno, I guess. And the bagpipes are actually really good. Like, I actually love this song. Like, it's the type of music you never ever hear in an anime, or anywhere at all for that matter. I don't necessarily dislike anime music, but most of the time, anime music is trash. It's not very good, but this song is actually kind of good. It's not Dire Straits good, but it is still pretty good. Watch this anime for nothing else other than the opening theme, because it's really fun, and I like it, and I listen to it actually quite often. It's a very good song. This movie was so bad it killed Sean Connery. Citation needed. On the Steamometer, I rated this movie as 2 of 4, and I think it's a Jules Verne derivative, I guess. In the 90s, Sean Connery was offered the role of Gandalf in the upcoming Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies, but declined the offer because he just didn't get what these fantasy movies were all about. Could you imagine that? It would be terrible. You have to bring the rings to Frodo, Mordor. Wait, can I redo that? After seeing the overwhelming success that these movies became, and the enormous fortune he missed out on, he decided to bite the bullet and give the fantasy genre another go. He ultimately accepted the role of main character shooty guy for a small sum of $17 million, which was about a fifth of the $78 million budget for the movie. The film did not receive good reviews, and there was a lawsuit accusing 20th Century Fox of plagiarism, which settled out of court. Though the movie did make $180 million in the box office, so I guess it did make its money back. The movie stinks. I don't know what's happening. I don't care either. The story is about some guy trying to take over the world or something. Connery has to enlist the help of a bunch of weirdos to save the day. There's a bunch of gadgetry and steampunk machines. Whatever. Who cares? I think if you've never seen a movie before, and this is the first movie you've ever seen, you'd probably think it's pretty good. Hellboy. Hell yeah. On the Steamometer, I rated this as 1 of 4 and is not steampunk. I love the Guillermo del Toro Hellboy films. The Hellboy films are pretty cheesy, but it's always fun when a director puts effort into a project like this, but also doesn't take it too seriously. Like, just the right amount of effort, but not too much effort. If that makes sense. I don't know if it does.
Perfect job for these babies. Made them myself. Holy water, clove leaves, silver shavings, white oak. The wakes.
The film doesn't do the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey thing. The main character, Red, is already ruined. He's a jerk to everybody, and he's just done with life. He doesn't become a better person by the end. He's mostly just the same jerk he was at the beginning. There's also this blue fish guy. He's pretty cool. And then there's Fire Girl. It's established in the film that Fire Girl, named Liz, had a past relationship with Red. Hellboy wants to get back together with her, but Liz feels that it isn't really a healthy relationship, and she thinks it would be best if she isolates herself from him. Another character, generic white guy, comes into the story, which creates a love triangle between the three. None of this is particularly groundbreaking, but it's a mature story for a superhero movie. There's a scene later in the movie that I enjoy, where we find out that Red is spying on white guy and Liz. This young boy discovers him, and Red is just totally nonchalant about the whole thing.
My mom baked them.
She's laughing.
Hmm?
She's sitting on a park bench, and she's laughing. That's it. I'm done.
The bad guys are just your normal villains of the week. They want to take over the world, yada yada. Guillermo del Toro Productions, I said it right? Always make a great use of practical effect monsters, and there are these dog things, they look pretty good, but they're nothing special. One downside to this movie is that while the characters are really good, the story is just bland. It's just another villain of the week trying to take over the world. After the movie is over, there isn't really much to think back to. None of the set pieces or fight scenes are that memorable. The only steampunk-like scene in this movie is at the end. They go to this ancient underground dungeon with a lot of gears. That's about it. Coincidentally, this final act feels a lot like the Alien vs. Predator movie, which came out the same year. They both have an ancient dungeon with monsters and booby traps, but Hellboy is of course the better movie. Howl's Moving Castle is the 4,358th consecutive anti-war movie created by Hayao Miyazaki. That man really doesn't like war. Huh. I wonder why. I've rated this as a maximum of 404 and is steampunk. I'm not sure what I can really say about Howl's Moving Castle that hasn't already been said. This is the Empire Strikes Back of animation. It's literally perfect in every way. I mean, the film is so perfect that during the 2005 Oscars, the film lost the Best Animated Feature Award to Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit? Are you kidding me? I guess a good place to start is with its steampunk elements. There is a lovely assortment of steampunk vehicles used throughout the film, steam cars and locomotives, battleships and airships, and, of course, the moving castle itself. I suppose Howl's Castle is magic-powered and not really steam-powered, which, in my opinion, is actually a really good way to blend the two technologies together, a hybrid of the two. And also, Calcifer is really cute. I mean, look at him. Gosh, I could eat him up if he wasn't made of fire. The animation of these machines is really beautiful, and I like how Miyazaki and his animators strike a balance between badass war machines and the actual consequences of using those war machines. A feature I like about the world that Ghibli created for this movie is that the soldiers' uniforms and the colors of each nation don't fit into our preconceived notions about what a good or evil empire may look like. They don't have enormous red banners and evil-looking soldiers looking for the next slaughter. It's just people living out their lives regardless of their occupation or allegiances. I think that this small element really helps to support the anti-war theme of this film, that there are no good guys or bad guys, more that war in any capacity is evil, and it invariably leads to the deaths of innocent people and the destruction of their entire lives. Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow? More like, roll of garbage. Ha! Got him! On the Steamometer, I gave this film a rating of 2 of 4, getting steamy, and is not steampunk. This is one of those movies you put on in the background while you clean the bathroom. It's not a bad movie, but it's hardly interesting. This movie is a precursor to modern movies being filmed entirely on green screens, and it doesn't look good. It has that Hollywood, silver screen, glitz and glamour shine, now that's Hollywood look that I really don't like. It's really soft, and it kind of feels like a YouTuber movie. This movie is loosely based on old film serials. These were short films, often with fantasy themes, and would be stitched together one after another to make a series or serial. There's a lot of nostalgia for these old serials, a nostalgia that people pretend to have because you'd have to be 1,000 years old to actually remember them. Flash Gordon was one of the more popular ones, and is notable for being the property that George Lucas plagiarized. Oops, I meant to say inspired him to make Star Wars. The story again involves an evil scientist wanting to take over the world. He has giant robots that attack people. Whatever, who cares? Sky Captain would be better labeled as dieselpunk because all the machines utilize combustion engines, except that dieselpunk is kind of just real life, so that terminology doesn't really work, does it? No. About half the movie involves two characters in a cockpit of a fighter plane. I'm not exaggerating, a significant percentage of this movie is just these two characters in this plane. And they used to date each other too, and they bicker a lot, and it's really awful and annoying and intolerable and bad. Our next movie is 2004's Steam Boy, and I have a feeling that it might just be a steampunk movie. On the Steamometer, I rated this for a maximum of 4 of 4, and is hot and steamy. This is a Japanese animated film and was directed by, hey, it's this guy again. This Otomo guy just won't leave me alone. According to Wikipedia, this had a budget of about 26 million, which for an animated film in Japan was quite a bit of money for its time. But I don't really know where that money went. The drawings and animation in this are fine, but not even remotely comparable to what Studio Ghibli was doing at the exact same time. Visually, it has the same problem as Metropolis, where it has an ugly, desaturated, and weird haze filter layered on top. There's almost no color in this movie. Not that every animated film needs to have color, but it does help the film stand out and feel more memorable. The quality of the animation has decreased from Metropolis as well. There's a far greater reliance on CGI, and the movie feels a bit less personal. Pretty much any scene with any amount of complexity utilizes 3D animation. Ghibli was using CGI too at the time, but they were careful not to become too dependent on it. The story is average. Supervillain builds a super weapon to take over the world, and our hero Steam Boy needs to save everyone. I don't think the Satomo guy is a very good writer. There are a lot of steampunk machines in this movie, but they're all CGI and really not that interesting. None of them feel particularly plausible, and neither are they so fantastical that they become larger than life. I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to say. The movie is fine, it's average, it doesn't really offend me, but I mostly just don't care. I'm back. Another day has passed. Come on, there we go. The floors aren't level. Okay. We're good. Another day has passed, and I'm wearing a different outfit. There's a tank top on me. It has these, like, ribs here, where the ribs are, like, bigger here, and then, like, smaller here, and it looks really nice. And it was really cheap, too. It was, like, $9, $11 from AliExpress, and it looks really nice, but there's one downside in that when I stand up, there's this gap here. There's a big gap, and it's really annoying. I guess it doesn't really become an issue with jeans, but I'm wearing my shorts, which are a bit low-rise, I guess. Is that what it's called? Low-rise? I don't know. Anyway. Oh my gosh. Get back in position, you. Our next film is Christopher Nolan's 2006... Wait, hold on. This is a real movie. Like, an actual, real, well-produced film? This doesn't belong here. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me fix something. But Orsifon, you're probably asking. Every list has this listed as steampunk or, oh God, Tesla punk. What do you mean it doesn't belong here? Well, dear viewer, let me explain this to you and your tiny little brain. Oh, it's so cute. Look at it. Steampunk and Christopher Nolan should not really be used in the same sentence. Christopher Nolan is not apprehensive towards fantasy, but his version of fantasy is as realistic as possible, and it's so realistic that his fantasy elements just become, well, real. The Prestige is another such film, and the only fantasy element is grounded in reality and hardly steampunk. To be honest, Nolan films are a bit hard for me to understand. They utilize a lot of nonlinear storytelling, which my tiny brain can't wrap its head around. Wait, didn't I say a moment ago that you had the tiny brain? I don't know anymore. I guess it's because I'm the one with the tiny brain. The tiny tank top. Essentially, the story is about two rival magicians who are trying to perfect the illusion of teleportation, and the extremes both of them are willing to go to achieve this goal. It's quite a good story, and apparently a man named Neil Berger... What? His last name is Berger? Okay, sure. Anyway, Mr. Berger thought so too, and released a movie with a similar premise the same year titled The Illusionist. This is something Hollywood does from time to time. When someone has an interesting but relatively simple or easily copyable story premise, a rival film studio will finance a film to compete with the original. In this such case, 2006's The Illusionist was just such a film. The Prestige received better critical reception and is generally considered to be the better film, which isn't too surprising considering Christopher Nolan was competing against an actual cheeseburger. Going back to the non-steampunkiness of this film, one of the two magicians enlists the help of Nikola Tesla to create a teleportation device to help him in fooling audiences more effectively. Many people misunderstand this technology and the setting as steampunk. However, this isn't steampunk, but is simply 20th century technology in the early 20th century. So, just the early 20th century, then. In 2006, there was still a mystique towards Nikola Tesla, but I'm not sure if that mystique is still there today. I actually read this... Wait, where is it? Oh, it's not here. Hold on. Oh my god. I didn't mean to slam into the wall that quickly. Here's the book. I read it in high school. It's, like, really big. Although... maybe not so big to some of you. Take that, Edison. There you go, Tesla. You can be in the foreframe. foreground, whatever it's called. Tesla coils are actually pretty neat. If you crank up the voltage and keep the current low, you can actually just electrocute yourself. If you wanted to, you probably shouldn't. Like, you might hurt yourself if you do, so that's my legal disclaimer, that you probably shouldn't electrocute yourself. Tesla is also played by David Bowie, which is pretty cool too. I don't have any criticisms of this movie. It's really good, and you should watch it if you get a chance, unless you don't like Nolan films, which I get. I kind of don't like them either. They're too complicated and non-linear. I like linear stories better. Our next film is titled The Golden Compass, and the film is not steampunk and is not very steamy either. After Harry Potter became a runaway success, movie studios were trying everything to cash in on the hot new fantasy genre. Most of these attempts to do so failed, and this is one such example. The Golden Compass, while a box office success and is based off of a novel that predates the first Harry Potter book, did not receive a sequel or become a rival franchise of Harry Potter. This was a bit of a disappointment to many of the fans of the movie, the dozens of them that exist. And the film ended on the cliffhanger. Sucks to be them. For a kids' movie, the story is actually quite good. It's complicated and occasionally nuanced, and there are numerous interesting characters. It's nothing revolutionary, but it's good for what it is. This is one of the movies that you watch with your mom, and every 10 seconds she asks you what's going on because she refuses to pay attention. And I must confess that during this occasion, I was the mom who wasn't paying attention. I had it playing on in the background while I was doing something else, and I have to say that I have no idea what was going on. There's this girl, and she gets given the golden compass, which can see into the future, I think. Then she goes on some kind of adventure with her Pokemon. She ends up in Alaska or Russia, I don't know. There's polar bears there. The polar bear that the girl befriends is an alcoholic, which I think is a really funny trait to have in a kids movie for a character. Then she finds the polar bear's armor, and they go on an adventure. That's all I can remember.
Turkey shoot? Yes.
The movie has one of my favorite character actors in it, Sam Elliott. He pretty much only plays a cowboy, and he's a cowboy in this movie too. He has an airship, and it is what it is. He has some lines. It's fine. I think if you own at least one Hatsune Miku figure, or have a horse poster on your wall, you'll probably really like this, but I only have a Super Sonico figure, so it's not compatible with me. I forgot to bring the Super Sonico figure for this part. I'll be right back. See? There she is. She's eating donuts. Can you see her? I don't know. Open the camera. There she is. This is so stupid. Wow. Unsubscribed. Another weeb.
Yes!
Our next film is The City of Ember from 2008, and it is a movie. It is rated as moderately steamy and is not steampunk. The movie's okay. It's perfectly fine. It does everything it needs to do. It's just fine. It's fine. The movie is based off of a children's book of the same name. The story is basically just Fallout for kids, or maybe Silo with less cursing. After an unknown cataclysmic event, people are forced into an underground city to live out their life for several generations until the surface recovers. But as a result of a vague political skirmish, the plan to return to the surface never happened and everyone still lives underground. A dozen or so generations later, and the generator that powers the city of Ember is far past the end of its life, and no longer are there any parts left to repair it. Blackouts are frequent and they're only getting worse, and it's only a matter of time before the lights don't come back on. Good thing we have a bunch of kids to save the day. The movie is just fine as a kids movie, but prevents itself from being anything more than that. There is probably a really interesting story in here, but it just gets wasted by laziness. This movie was just a paycheck for everyone involved. The only A-list actor is Bill Murray, and he does a good job of playing a selfish megalomaniac. One of the major takeaways of this movie was how lazy the sound design was. Every sound effect in this movie was taken from a sound library, and once you recognize these sounds, you see them everywhere. You have the wooden door squeak, pottery break, Wilhelm scream. Well, I guess Wilhelm scream's kind of well known, everybody knows it. Yahoo! That's not Wilhelm scream. What am I thinking? Using these occasionally is fine, but over-dependence on them is really lazy. When I saw this as a kid, there was this big mole rat thing that scared me to death. This scene with Bill Murray going into his food lair only to find a giant mole rat there was really unsettling to me at the time. I had nightmares for years about that thing. I mean, the movie isn't really scary, but when you're a kid, you get scared of stuff like that. And the movie kind of sucks, don't watch it. Hellboy 2, Electric Boogaloo. On the Steamometer, I give this a 3 of 4, getting steamy, and is steampunk. I honestly don't really care for the first Hellboy movie at all. I went into detail about it a little bit. You know, it's fine. It's fine. This one is so much better. Guillermo del Toro cranked this up from like a 6 to like a 8.5, maybe a 9. The story is really good. There's an ancient army of mechanical warriors that the elves used to conquer humanity, but the king of the elves, named Balor, was overwhelmed by the carnage and decided to put them back into a storage locker. The king's son, Prince Duana, was unhappy that his father didn't enslave all of humanity, so he left for a while, and then he came back just in time for the movie, which was really nice of him. And, you know, Hellboy's there too, and he's pretty cool. The characters and screenplay are really good. The characters all feel personable and real.
Everything is your stuff. The same CD, LP.
Al Green. You can't listen to Al Green on CD, but it's good to keep.
And an 8-track? An 8-track, Rod?
Yeah, well, one day the world's gonna realize it's a mistake. 8-track was the way to go.
Oh my god, Hellboy is me. I collect old garbage like 8-tracks, but not actually 8-tracks. I collect cassette tapes and open reel tapes. No one actor really stands out among the others, but I feel that they're all giving a pretty good performance overall, like balance-wise, like it's balanced, equal. I will bring up though that the department head of BPRD, which stands for the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, who was played by Jeffrey Tambor, does a really good job of playing a spineless coward.
God, I hate YouTube.
How can you not like YouTube? Babe! Get my gun! I don't have a babe or a gun. All the classics are here. Random Lionel Hutz clips, Hello Fat Fetish Artist, another Japanese VTuber says the N-word. They're all here! I mean, it's great. I'm here too now. I'm here now. I'm now here too. Subscribe. The character has absolutely no confidence whatsoever, and every scene with him is great.
I confiscated a box of these, and I'll get you some more.
The dynamic between him, who is supposed to be an authority figure, and Hellboy, who is supposed to be like the underling, produces a really good chemistry between the two, or maybe a lack thereof. There are a lot more interesting side and background characters in this movie as well compared to the previous one. And the standout scene is definitely the troll market. Everyone there is in costume, and they're all just so weird. When the elf princess seeks out the map to the Golden Army, she meets with this peculiar-looking man. He's such an odd fellow, and his head has a cathedral carved where his hair would be. And there are two other characters too that I like. The Elf King's Chamberlain, with his enormous neck and head. He looks like a stick of butter. And towards the end of the film, we're introduced with this character, who's a biblically accurate angel, and he has no face, but his wings have a bunch of eyes on them, and he's such a creep, and I love it. I love weird, creepy characters like this. These details really show the craftsmanship that was put into this movie, and is a significant improvement over the previous one. It's kind of a shame that Del Toro never got to direct that Hobbit movie, and we got those CGI ones instead. The action scenes are also significantly improved over the previous film. In addition to better complexity and budget, they are much more unique. The previous Hellboy film utilized settings that were poorly lit or dark, which led to many of them not being very colorful. And the big scary monster thing was just some dog, which is, you know, fun, but not as good as this film, which is much better. Each action scene utilizes a different set piece and a different enemy, which really helps them stand out. Hellboy 2 has many steampunk elements. The Golden Army itself is mechanical, but also magic-powered. Hellboy and Prince Nuana's final battle takes place on a bunch of giant gears, which makes for a really nice set piece, and I really do like giant gears in movies. They're fun. It's always a fun set piece. However, in steampunk, it's often too easy to throw a bunch of gears in every which way and call it a day, but this movie goes to the effort of at least placing them in a setting where it's plausible that they have an actual purpose. Great movie, would recommend, and you can just watch this movie independently. You don't need to watch the previous film or any other sequels, prequels, spin-offs. Looking at you, Marvel. 2008's Igor is most notable for being the first feature-length animated movie to be fully funded by private equity. Add that one to your pub's trivia night. On the Steamometer, I rated this as 2 of 4, getting steamy, and is steampunk. I really like this excerpt from Wikipedia. In the 2000s, the increasing amount of cheap technology led to smaller, independent companies to produce films in the animation industry. Like, it's so funny to me, the only notable thing about this movie on Wikipedia was how cheap it was to make. The film is fine, I guess. Back in the late 2000s and early 10s, this is a movie you'd find in one of those chain link bins at Walmart. Every DVD inside costs $5 and was probably not very good. My family ended up with a copy of Igor from one of these bins. We didn't have cable, so I had to watch this movie over and over and over again while playing with my Legos. So I've probably seen this movie about 100 times. I had an Xbox 360 in my room, and anytime I wanted to pause or play the video, I needed to power on the controller, press one button, and disconnect the batteries immediately. My mom insisted on buying those awful cheap Kodak batteries that have no capacity in them, and I was like a chain smoker with them. I kept using them, and my mom always yelled at me. The movie is about a hunchback who dreams of being an evil scientist, but is prevented from doing so because of his hunch. There's an evil monster Thunderdome thing that all the evil scientists participate in, and they create evil inventions that fight each other. Igor's master dies, and Igor uses this as an opportunity to become a scientist of his own and create life. But this evil monster becomes something far worse. A vain actress who wants to become the lead actor in Annie! Ah! The script and voice acting is actually shockingly good. Not Oscar-worthy, but it's good enough. There are quite a few good actors used in this movie, and I guess that's where most of the budget went. Steve Buscemi plays weird bunny guy.
Brace the kid, should be a pushover.
We'll be near the In-N-Out burger.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
He has the gift of immortality, but also refuses to keep living and tries to double plus ungood himself, because I'm apparently not allowed to say the S word. It's a bit odd to have a character like this in a kids movie. You're supposed to tell kids how great life is, and it's fun to be alive. It's fun. Isn't it fun to live? No problems. No problems. There's also a brain in jar called Brian, because he spelled his name wrong. He's not very bright, which is a funny subversion. Eva is the big monster girl, and she wants the part of Annie in the stage play Annie. And she sings a lot of the songs from Annie. The animation is fine. It's obviously cheap, but it's fine. It is what it is. There was a scene in the beginning of the narration where they mirrored the footage from later in the movie instead of creating more animation, which is really clever, but also really cheap. The film has no right being as funny as it should be. I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to see this ever again. If you're babysitting a kid and this comes on, it won't be the worst experience.
Happy Mother's Day.
Did you know that the number 9 in the movie 9 is actually a reference to how many people saw this in the theaters? On the Steamometer, I gave this movie a rating of 1 of 4, little to no steam, and is not steampunk. I don't care for this movie at all. It's not bad, it's just kind of eh. There's this big evil guy, which is pretty cool looking, and apparently he killed all of humanity, which is, honestly badass. Hell yeah, man. Keep up the good work. He also looks like HAL 9000, because all robots look like HAL 9000. The film takes place in this depressing, desaturated environment that has no color at all. I just feel depressed watching 9. But for a children's movie, a color scheme like this just isn't very appealing and likely had a significant impact on the reach of this film, or lack thereof. I doubt they sold very many toys of potato sack people. Another day, another dime. I'm back again. I mean, I guess you didn't leave, but I left. I didn't record yesterday. I just played video games. Wait, there's tape here. Oh my god. Okay, I solved the problem. And my table is tall, and so I have to raise up my chair really high so my feet don't touch the ground. So when I try to move, it's really awkward. I'm kicking my feet right now. You can't see it? Wait, I can show it to you, actually. See? My legs. Whee! When doing research for this video, I kept seeing this movie being recommended, Hugo, from 2011. The fandom Steampunk wiki lists this film as clockpunk. Clockpunk is an offshoot of steampunk that shares many of the core elements. However, never developed steam technology beyond its capabilities in the real world, instead focusing on clockworks. This isn't steampunk or clockpunk, but it is really something special, and I rate this movie as 1 of 4 on the Steamometer for having little to no steam, and again is not steampunk. It tells the story of a boy named Hugo who lives alone in a railway station in Paris in the 1930s, only to become embroiled in the mystery surrounding his late father's automaton and the pioneering filmmaker George Méliès. Who is George Méliès, you may ask? Well, the keen among you may remember that our first film was in fact one of his. While this movie Hugo is at first a story about a young homeless boy living in a train station, we soon find out this movie is really about Méliès. Méliès was a very prolific filmmaker in the early 20th century, but the trauma endured by the participants of the First Great War resulted in these joyful fantasy films becoming a thing of the past. People stopped going to the cinemas to see Méliès' movies, and after several failed attempts, he was forced to stop producing films altogether. He destroyed his studio, and his original original film negatives were sold to a company to be melted down, and the cellulite in those negatives would be used to make shoes. With what little money he had remaining, he opened a toy store at a train station and had planned to live out the rest of his life in despair. His life work was destroyed, and many people believed that he was dead. Fortunately, this was not the case, and Méliès would eventually be recognized for his achievements, and go on to receive the Légion d'honneur medal, the highest and most prestigious national order of merit in France. Martin Scorsese was the director of this movie, and as expected, he did a wonderful job. The movie is happy and colorful. Never is there a moment in this film which is dull or boring. A lot of the background or exterior shots use CGI, and for 2011, it holds up very well. There's a shot I really like in the first few moments of the movie. In the establishing shot of Méliès' toy store, we get an extreme close-up of his eyes, and in the reflection, we see a clock face that Hugo stares out from. It's a wonderful little shot that says, "I know you're there, boy." Is that the voice I'm doing? And when Hugo tries to sneak up to steal the little mouse, Méliès pretends to be asleep to catch him, and I think it's a really lovely vignette. The movie is not steampunk or clockpunk. It's a train station in the 1930s, so there's plenty of steam engines, and those are the only things in the movie that create any steam. There are a lot of clocks and gears in this movie, though. I mean, it is clockpunk apparently, so that makes sense. But, you know, gears are neat. I already said that in the Hellboy Part 2. An important subplot in this story is about Hugo wanting to restore an automaton that his father left him. It is pretty neat to see an actual mechanical device like this in action. The data for automatons like this are stored on these vertebrae-looking discs, and they're timed in such a way that allows the automaton to perform a very specific range of motion. I think it's pretty neat. Hugo is a really wonderful movie, unlike the next one, which isn't as lovely as this one. Sucker Punch. Where do I begin? This film was directed and written by Zack Snyder. The IMDb summary for this film reads, "A young girl is institutionalized by her abusive stepfather and retreats to an alternate reality as a coping strategy and envisions a plan to help her escape." I'll rate this movie as 2 of 4, moderately steamy, and is not steampunk. There is a lot going on in this movie, and none of it is good. The film opens with a slowed, edgy TikTok cover of Sweet Dreams by Rhythmix, and shows us a little girl who just lost her mother. Then we're shown this comically evil man who not so subtly demonstrates he was after the woman's money. His performance reminds me of those weird Merge Mansion ads. Then we have a film school graduate emulation of this shot from Evil Dead. There's quite a few of these derivative famous movie shots in this movie. The man conspires to kill the 2 girls, or something, and the struggle between the 2 results in the death of the girl's sister. Skipping ahead a bit in time, the young girl gets institutionalized in an insane asylum, and the little girl is scheduled to be lobotomized. And then we find out that the asylum is actually a brothel, and all the men are bad and evil except for this guy. And then we find out the girls are forced to dance, and that baby girl, as we find out her name is really good at dancing, but we never actually see her dance. We just see a fantasy world she escaped to, apparently. Some of the girls get together and engineer an escape plan, and then they get into trouble, and only some of them make them out. And then it's a happy ending. His first 2 films were pretty okay, I guess, but everything since has just been kind of lousy. He's a competent director, but one of the worst writers and cinematographers I've ever seen. Sucker Punch was designed to be some kind of feminist statement from Zack Snyder, which is funny, but it comes out as extremely misogynistic and tone-deaf. Snyder is way too much of a bro, a dude, to really understand how to write women correctly. He only seems to understand how to write women from a man's perspective. When he writes for Baby Doll in this movie, he puts himself in her shoes and asks himself, what would I do in this situation? And as it would turn out, he imagines himself as a badass and invincible warrior who wears a cool uniform and creates endless carnage. A woman would never ever fantasize about being a badass warrior to cope with trauma. She would probably reach back into her memory of the good times she had with her mother and sister prior to this man taking it all away from her. Like, am I wrong here? I feel like that's probably what I would do too. A bro like Snyder seems to not be able to understand that women don't think like men, and women think like women. If you look at the dream sequences in a vacuum, there's not anything inherently wrong with them. You can just make a movie with attractive women wearing skimpy outfits and doing boy things. That's just what anime is, pretty much. But this movie tried to tack on a silly message about feminism without actually doing so. In an interview with Zack Snyder, journalist Jack Gerricks I'm not good with names, I'm sorry, who works for Film School Rejects, asks, I thought Sucker Punch was you basically commenting on those attendants at Comic-Con who shout, "You're hot," at beautiful cast members. To which Zack Snyder replied, it's funny because someone asked me why I dressed the girls like that, and I said, do you not get the metaphor there? The girls are in a brothel performing for men in the dark. In the fantasy sequences, the men in the dark are us. The men in the dark are basically me. Dorky sci-fi kids. Snyder said in another quote for an out-of-print article by The Provenance, though it's fetishistic and personal, I like to think my fetishes aren't that obscure. Who doesn't want to see girls running down the trenches of World War I wreaking havoc? A broken clock is right twice a day. He's probably not wrong, but he should probably have just made this into a short film or a music video and not a long movie. The film tries to be feminist and fails, and I think it comes down to the principle of writing by men for men versus writing about men. Sucker Punch is Zack Snyder's idea of what a criticism of men looks like, but cannot fully grasp these ideas beyond the superficial. He keeps telling us that men are bad, but Snyder does not explain why these men are bad. If we take a look at the 2015 film Mad Max Fury Road, we get a glimpse of what a world created by Zack Snyder really looks like. The world has ended and men have not learned why. Warlords and war machines roam the wasteland, and women are still treated as objects. You can spoil women with things and a good quality of life, but you're still denying their freedom. The war boys are the embodiment of the male spirit. Witness me in my creation, my glory, my strength. But apparently claim no responsibility for the damage they cause to the world. The women in Mad Max can only live a good life after they kill every man they can, and only refrain from killing Max after a recommendation from Furiosa not to. Mad Max Fury Road is the true embodiment of the male spirit, its strengths and its weaknesses.
Everyone and everything!
We're not to blame!
And who killed the world?
Sucker Punch is just a fantasy. I suppose I should briefly overview the steampunk elements of this movie. In the real world of the movie, one of the characters utilizes an open-reel tape recorder to play music. This is fine and all, but the film takes place in the 1960s, so it's a bit anachronistic for one to be playing Bjork. Watching this felt a little bit familiar. I was thinking during the time, what if I watched recently that had a big samurai in it? I totally forgot about it, and then I was reading through the Wikipedia later, and it said Brazil was one of the references, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense that Snyder would steal something and make it worse. The samurai in Brazil is a metaphor of a few different things, primarily Sam's desire to overcome the oppression of the authoritarian government and its tyrannical use of technology. It's also an allegory for what was at the time an extremely dominant Japanese economy. Snyder seems to have been trying to do the same thing, but doesn't seem to understand anything other than woman, gun, hot, tea. The second dream sequence takes place in the First Great War, and does in fact have girls running down trenches wreaking havoc. The German soldiers are brought back to life by steam, which I guess is just a censorship-free version of Nazi zombies. The third dream sequence is fantasy-themed, but still has the girls using anachronistic modern weaponry instead of period-correct weapons. The fourth sequence is the last, and takes place in space or something. There's a train and robots, and it's the weakest of the four. You can watch all these dream sequences just on YouTube, and you don't have to watch the movie. Or you could watch the director's cut and watch 2 hours of women in a brothel. For some reason, if you're into that. Let's move on.
Don't ever write a check with your mouth you can't cash with your ass.
Our next film is a double feature and is actually a Chinese production. The only other Chinese movie I've ever seen is the Jackie Chan film Police Story, which was pretty good, and was also made in Hong Kong, so technically not Chinese. Asterisk, double asterisk, triple asterisk. So it was interesting to see another. I rated these two movies as 3 of 4, Getting Steamy, and Are Not Steampunk. These two movies are martial arts films and utilize unusual production techniques.
I've always loved you. But your family's so well off. And I
don't care.
I've seen a lot of weird movies in my time, but never a film quite like this one before. It's really weird and foreign. Like, obviously it's a Chinese movie, but it just feels very Chinese. If we take a moment to briefly examine a Kurosawa film or a movie made by Bong Joon-ho, they don't really feel foreign. They may have a few Eastern elements in them, but they still use well-established filming techniques, and they don't really feel that foreign at all, other than maybe some of the story elements. Watching Tai Chi Hero or Tai Chi Zero is like watching an hour-and-a-half long portfolio of an Adobe After Effects animator. There are so many motion graphics in this movie, like a huge amount. It's extremely jarring, especially because the version I watched didn't translate them fully. I have no idea what any of them say. I guess a lot of these motion graphics seem to be part of a motif that would probably be well recognized among this genre in China, but is completely foreign to someone like me. The graphics are clearly inspired by fighting games like Street Fighter, but the film notably lacks my favorite cutie patootie, Chun-Li.
A fortnight.
There's also a lot of 2D animation used. The opening credits, which don't start until 15 minutes in for some reason, are pretty neat. They end by transitioning to the guy's real actual face, which makes you go, oh yeah, right, it's not a fun animated movie, it's a weird Chinese movie. And then they do it again, and again. There's 3 intro sequences in the intro. It's really weird. Our main character guy, Liu Chan, has a weird forehead bump, which I'm not going to show you because it's kind of gross looking, and when pushed in like a button, he enters a berserk mode and destroys everyone in his path. Everyone in this movie calls it 3 blossoms on the crown, which I'm not sure if there's any historical background info on that name, but that's what everyone calls it. Liu Chan travels to this village to learn Tai Chi, but is rejected by the town because he is an outsider. This is loosely based on the real-life history of Tai Chi, originally being a closely guarded secret among the Chen family of Chen Village. One of the antagonists in the story, Top Hat Man, is also considered an outsider to Tai Chi, but ultimately chooses a different path in life. He familiarizes himself with Western technology and returns to the village in hopes of convincing the town elders to adopt Western ways, but they reject this and want things to stay the way they are. He returns later with this wacky steam tank thing, which lays track as it goes along. Is that the Lionsgate logo? It's a bit weird to see an Asian man wearing a top hat and Western clothes. Like, I know there are historical reasons for people of this region to wear Western clothes, but you know, top hats are kind of funny, though that strategy did not necessarily develop in Japan's favor. The martial arts in this movie are pretty good, I guess. I wouldn't really know, to be honest. It seems like they know what they're doing. Some of the effects are questionable.
Can't you tell?
I guess they're generally okay. There are definitely a few scenes where I burst out laughing, though. The female love interests that are in these movies are portrayed as fairly strong and intelligent, and there's also a British girl, too, in a position of authority. This may or may not be progressive for China. I don't know, but I guess it's nice. Thanks, China. There are a few moments in this movie that use generic knockoff Ennio Morricone songs. He's the guy that does the wee wee wow wow wow. And then at the end of the first movie, we're introduced to a Lee Van Cleef knockoff, but before that, we get this wonderful line, taking without permission is not a right.
Taking without permission is theft.
Which is a really bold thing for China to say. At the end of the first movie, the main character guy is incapacitated, and the town wants to disarm him by pulling out his tendons, and like, what the heck? That's so brutal. I guess it's period correct, but wow, that's really messed up.
Do you know how?
We must pull out his tendons and break his bones.
The dub for this movie is really funny, too.
Thank you, Granduncle. Unfortunately, I have great ambition but little talent. I am ignorant and incompetent.
At the end of the first movie, I thought to myself, oh, that was pretty good. But then the movie hit me with a, but wait, there's more! They baited the audience into thinking the movie was over by rolling the credits, and then they rolled the credits back to continue the movie. I have never, ever seen a movie troll the audience like that before. It's so weird, and there are so many other weird things about this movie to talk about, but we don't have time to talk about it because, oh my gosh, look at that runtime. That's a lot of video. The second movie ends with a mild cliffhanger, showing this crazy steampunk factory with a big evil skull, but unfortunately there was never a third movie, so I guess it wasn't very popular. These movies aren't good, but they're really fun. The dubs are terrible, but honestly hilarious. You can watch both of these movies for free on YouTube currently. If you're watching this in the future, they may not be free on YouTube, which isn't cool. Our next film is War of the World Goliath. On the Steamometer, I ranked this film as 304, getting steamy, and is steampunk. I must confess, I did not finish this movie. It's one of those straight-to-DVD animated films that have 5 minutes of actual animation and 85 minutes of exposition. The opening credits are like 3 minutes long and has the most bizarre song with the weirdest vocals I've ever heard. Like, this is the kind of song you'd hear being sung in the corner of a dive bar in Star Wars. And also, I think these intro credits were animated in Microsoft PowerPoint. I mean, look at these transitions. Oh my god. Then finally, after a 4-minute PowerPoint slides presentation, we receive another minute of just nothing. Like, a significant amount of the animation is just moving the X and Y axis around. Like, I can do it right now, see? It's that easy. Whee! After 42 years, the movie finally starts, and we're introduced to a family of 3 who are hiding from an H.G. Wells Martian tripod. Instead of hiding from the tripod, which obviously did not see them, they decide to run out into the street so the tripod can vaporize the 2 parents. This awful writing and direction gives our main character his motivation for the rest of the movie. I really like the part where the kids' parents get vaporized. It's nice. It's comforting to see. Then the movie jumps to a few years later, and everything is A-OK. The city is rebuilt, and they have propeller planes that also use jet engines, which is stupid. Pick one or the other, not both, you idiot. Then we go to this lecture hall with all these soldier-looking guys, but I got bored and stopped watching, and I jumped around to a bunch of parts on my timeline, and some of it looks kind of interesting, but I don't really care that much, and we're going to move on. Ew, yuck. Our next movie is a found footage film, which means that it's going to be really lame. I rated this movie as 1 of 4, little to no steam, and is not steampunk. This movie is fundamentally flawed in its premise. The film takes place towards the end of World War II. A platoon of Russian soldiers are pushing forward into German-occupied territory and encounter a bunch of nefarious research experiments. The story is hardly original, but tries to do something different by being a found footage film. Specifically, a found footage movie cannot technically exist prior to 1983, as that's when Sony introduced the first camcorder to the market. I actually own one. It's called a beta movie, and you won't believe this, but it's not here. I have to go get it. I'll be right back. I have returned to show you more of my toys. I don't have friends. I hope you don't mind. Your phone is better than this in every conceivable way. It's big and heavy, and it actually still works, too. Look at these batteries. Boom! It's dead. Oh my gosh. You see, it's also an SLR design. So the camera doesn't have to be on for me to see you. Wow, look at you go. Aren't you... I mean, you're something, all right. You can go right here while I talk about things. Technically, you could have a found footage movie set prior to this, but there would be quite a few different technical limitations that would make this a bit problematic. They did have portable VCRs and cameras prior to 1983, but these were really bulky and power-hungry, and you're not going to be running through the woods with one. The only other realistic option is that they used film, and this is exactly what they used in the movie. Not really, they used digital to actually shoot the movie and added all the effects in post. The issue is that film from this time period cannot record sound. They would have needed to use a separate audio recorder at the time as well. And the issue with using a separate audio recorder was that they are all stationary devices and weren't necessarily portable. The film is also in color, which was technically available at the time, but not really of very good quality. Another issue is the film's frame rate. The movie is shot at about 24 frames per second, which means that for an hour-and-a-half movie, they would need to carry at least 8 400-foot reels of film. For a soldier, that isn't a monstrous amount of weight, but to carry an entire duffel bag worth of film, plus a tripod and camera itself through the hills and forests of rural Europe is a bit unrealistic. A standard VHS tape has a recording time of at least 120 minutes at standard speed, and can record sound, and is a lot lighter, and a lot smaller, and you don't need a duffel bag of film and camera gear. A casual viewer might not be bothered by this, but I'm a weirdo who lives in the basement and collects old e-waste garbage, so, you know, it doesn't really work on me, unfortunately. For the movie itself, it's fine, I guess. It doesn't really bother me in any way other than I dislike found footage movies. The camera is always positioned at weird angles and always cuts away inconveniently. It's a dirt cheap way to build suspense and tension, and save on production costs because you can just turn the camera in a direction that doesn't have anything happening. But the cameramen, why are they always so bad in these movies? Like, Just point at the thing that's happening. It's so easy. The characters in this movie are all unlikable jerks. They're just so mean to each other, and they all yell a lot. There's this particularly evil scene where they just kill a bunny. It's like, wow, that's really messed up. I don't like that at all. There's a bunch of evil German genetic experiments in this movie, which basically boils down to a bunch of people wearing monster costumes. They're good costumes, a bit wacky or silly at times, and I don't really have anything bad to say about them. There's one creature in the first act of the movie I really like, but it's a bit disturbing, so I'll have to blur it for YouTube. The actor is wearing a pale bodysuit with a number of cuts and stitches on its person, and has a chainsaw for an arm. The actor gives a really good performance of a creepy monster, and it's genuinely unsettling. Some of the other monsters are a bit silly. There's this one guy who has a big propeller for a head, and I don't think it's very threatening. My absolute favorite part of this movie is in the beginning, when they first encounter the research facility, and the camera guy creeps up on this weird object, which turns out to be a steampunk cross. This is the dumbest prop I've ever seen in my life, and I love it. It wasn't enough for me to love this movie, but it gave me a good laugh. If you like extreme violence, then you'll like this movie. But I don't. I like my little cartoons about love and trains. They're the best. From the studio that brought you Coraline and many more movies that aren't Coraline is 2014's The Box Bomb. Oh, sorry, I meant to say Box Trolls. On the Steamometer, I rated this as 2 of 4, moderately steamy, and is not steampunk. Leica keeps making movies, but no one watches them. People just like Coraline. I just like Coraline. Oh, did you know that Mr. Babinski's medal is the same one given to the Chernobyl liquidators? There's that one, and the Lord of the Rings one that your boyfriend will never stop telling people about. Their most recent box office bomb was a movie titled The Missing Link. It's a pretty movie, but the story is nothing special. $100 million budget and they barely make a quarter of it back. The Box Trolls is fine. It's a good movie, but there isn't enough in it for little kids to enjoy, but there also isn't enough subtext for people to argue about it on the internet forums. The story is about little trolls who wear boxes, so, you know, box trolls. They come up at night and steal garbage from people's bins. They're really cute, and they're named after the label on each of their boxes. The boy character is called Egg, and there's Fish and Shoe. They're great too. But this creepy guy wants to get himself a posh white hat, so he uses them as a scapegoat to get into power. The henchmen are really well written. I like how they say they are the good guys, but they aren't the good guys, and it's a funny subversion.
You really think these box trolls understand the duality of good and evil?
They must, right? Why else would they hide from us? We are the good guys.
The animation is great, the lighting is nice, and all the colors are pastel-like. The voice acting is really good too. Everyone does a good job, especially the adult characters. The evil guy is voiced by Ben Kingsley and does a really good evil guy voice.
Look at all these boxes left lying about. How curious, how peculiar.
The voice acting of the two kids is serviceable, but not really funny or memorable in any way. There are a few steampunk contraptions in this movie. One of the characters in the White Hat Society has a steampunk wheelchair, and the troll catchers have a steampunk car, which is neat. Then at the end of the movie, we're introduced to this particularly evil contraption. If you like Coraline, and you want more Coraline, you're not going to get more Coraline, unfortunately, but you can settle for the box trolls.
Wow, good speech.
Our next film is hot and steamy and 100% steampunk, 2015's April in the Extraordinary World. This is a French animated film which takes place in an alternate 20th century where everyone in the world is forced to still use steam. Unlike most steampunk stories where they don't use steam at all, or need a magic crystal to justify the technology of their world, this film is quite clever and makes do without a loophole. The opening scene shows us a scientist trying to create super soldiers, of which Napoleon III has a great interest in to win the war against Prussia. An accident occurs and they both explode, which results in Napoleon III's son, Louis Napoleon, to become Napoleon IV and become the new Emperor of France. He signs a peace treaty with Prussia and the War of 1870 never happens. A few years later, scientists around the world start to disappear until there are virtually none left. Scientific development has stopped entirely, and the entire world depends on coal. This overdependence on coal forces the mines to run dry, and coal is replaced by charcoal. European forests are flattened, and an energy crisis ensues. This drives the French Empire to declare war on the Americas for the control of the Canadian forest land. This is really good world building, though a bit far-fetched. After the opening, we find out that the story takes place in 1931, and I feel this is a little too early to justify the deforestation of all of Europe to produce charcoal. The animation in this story is really quite lovely. It's largely 2D animated with a few instances of 3D animation, only used occasionally, and I feel it's a lot better implemented than in Steam Boy. The world design for this movie is really really depressing. About halfway through the movie, there's a scene where the characters meet in a public area that has a large oak tree, and we find out it's one of the last 3 remaining oak trees in existence. And wow, that's really depressing. I really like trees, and now they're all dead, and I'm kind of sad. But what this movie does that a movie like 9 does not do is balance the bleak atmosphere with color and humor. The animators appear to be particularly fond of the color red. Most, if not all, the scenes in this movie will be mostly grayscale, but with a very diligent use of the color red. And towards the end of the movie, we are treated to a lot of green nature, which is really comforting because I was scared all the trees died. The humor in this film is cute, and there are a lot of little gags here and there. This movie isn't really a comedy, but is certainly lighthearted. I particularly like this one where the 2 scientists give a young girl a coin, and then she sings a propaganda song, which makes the 2 anti-war scientists very uncomfortable, which is a cute scene.
Chargez, chargez, soldats de notre empire.
The final scene of the movie is a narration of the progress that was made when all the scientists were freed, and at one point they talk about how with clean and limitless oil, the energy wars ended.
July 20th, 1951. Thanks to clean and limitless oil, the energy wars are over.
What do you mean, clean and limitless oil? What kind of propaganda is this? The next story is an anime with the title Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress. This is a 2016 steampunk anime, and I rated it on the Steamometer as hot and steamy. This is a pretty typical high-budget anime that comes with all the tropes you'd expect to see. An unusual fantasy premise, which is legally different from Attack on Titan. Melodramatic voice acting.
Is that true? Do you really want to be a hero?
I just don't like running away.
A young, arrogant, know-it-all main character, samurai and sword fighting, lots of mecha or mechanical creations, and most importantly, anime girls. Where would society be without anime girls? It would probably be a better place.
What are you doing?
What happened to you? You're not normal.
Kabaneri features a variety of anime girls. Our female protagonist is named Mume, and she has a pretty cool outfit. She's a skilled fighter, and there are a few nice fight scenes in the anime with her. But the most important aspect about her, without a doubt, is that she is 12 years old. Japan, why must you fail me so often? Why must you insist on showing upskirt angles of 12-year-old girls? Why must you insist on catering to perverts? The other female characters in this show are generally more mature, sort of. The 2 other girls in the show, Ayame, the daughter of a powerful ruling family, and Yukina, the locomotive's engineer. Yukina is a cutie patootie. I like the part where she takes off her jacket and turns out she's shredded. Like, I was thinking at the time, isn't that nice to see a woman being portrayed in an anime as something other than weak and feeble? The way these characters look, you'd think that they should be in their 20s at least, but no, they are 17 and 16 respectively. I guess women in Japan just expire after they turn 18. Our selfish, arrogant, know-it-all protagonist, Ikoma, is 17, which makes his relationship with Mume a bit more suspicious. He tries really hard to prove himself to the world, and of course all the adults are stupid and ignorant and need an intellectual boy like himself to save the day. Actually, something that I really like about this anime is that all the mature characters in the show, which for some reason includes Mume, she's written to be far too mature for a literal 12-year-old, never hesitate to beat the shit out of Ikoma anytime he tries to be an anime protagonist. It's great.
Hey, you! I was in the middle of...
I don't know if this was intended to be a commentary on anime protagonists always being lame weirdos and should rightfully be kicked down, but that's what it felt like to me. Like, in the first episode, Ikoma is found to be hoarding organs that he harvested from the undead, and everyone is, like, freaked out. This guy is the protagonist, and he's clearly not mentally stable, and we're rooting for him. Like, no, he's not the good guy here. The story is not very interesting. It's fine for what it is, but is largely just an excuse to get to the next set piece or action scene. In my favorite episode, they encounter a station that's been overrun by the undead, but they're unable to go past the station because of the debris on the tracks. The animation is quite good. It's pretty and isn't a slideshow or a bunch of static images with fake camera movements. There are definitely a few moments of mostly emotionless characters that lore dump onto us, but it's anime, and anime does that for some reason. I guess it's cheap. I guess I can't blame them. The show doesn't really stand out among other anime or try anything different. It's just fine. If you like anime or you're a pervert, you'll probably really like this. Our next film is one of the dozens of Batman movies that you've never heard of. Batman Gotham by Gaslight is a 2018 animated film that some people like. And what's truly interesting about these people is that there's a significant overlap between them and the last people on Earth who still use DVD players. These DC animated movies are made on shoestring budgets and make back most of their money from physical media sales. I think. I didn't do any research. Don't quote me on that. This isn't inherently an issue, but there is a reputation for movies that only get released on DVD, and this movie does not break free from that reputation at all. If you've never seen a DC animated movie, you're not missing out on much. The writing, the voice acting, the animation, every single thing about these movies are awful. I've seen a few of them, and I just don't understand how people can watch them. Any humor or jokes always fall flat, and they never ever deliver on whatever nuance may have been present in the original comic. Batman Gotham by Gaslight has a very minor subversion by setting the story in a Victorian-era Gotham City, as opposed to a not Victorian-era Gotham City. This could have been an opportunity for weird steampunk hijinks, but is notably lacking in any mecha or weird contraptions or steam or gears. There's a normal, boring airship, and at the end of the movie, Batman has a steam motorcycle, which I guess is better than nothing, but it's just a motorcycle that looks like a steam motorcycle. The antagonist of this story is Jack the Ripper, an English serial killer that for some reason is now in Gotham, which is in America. Like, come on, could you have come up with something a bit more original or clever than Jack the Ripper? That's just so lame. Just like the previously mentioned War of the Worlds Goliath, this movie utilizes a lot of boring exposition and boring static images. It's not even 90 minutes either, it's only 78, but you feel every second watching this. Gordon turns out to be Jack the Ripper. Oops, sorry, hope I didn't ruin it for you. I'm sorry, that was mean. I'm back again. I went for a walk today. I actually touched grass. I went to a local park. It was nice there. It was pretty shady. I went later in the day. This girl waved to me for some reason, and I sheepishly waved back, and then I ran away. Be safe out there, boys. Our next steampunk thing is from Season 2 of Matt Groening's Disenchantment. Groening is best known as the creator of The Simpsons and Futurama, and is a pretty cool guy.
The cash register says NRA forever. Just one of the hundreds of radical right-wing messages inserted into every show by creator Matt Groening.
Disenchantment stars this girl named Bean. She's an alcoholic and wears these weird boots and has freckles. And she has an elf friend named Elfo, which I think is a pretty funny name. There's a dozen other interesting characters too, but the steampunk arc in Disenchantment only utilizes those two, so those are the only ones we're talking about. Bean and Elfo are chasing down some evil woman and end up in Steamland, a land entirely powered by steam, which I thought I'd explain to you in case you didn't pick up on it. Unlike previous steampunk environments, Steamland cranks like the steampunk up to like hot and steamy +1, which makes it very steamy. I don't have a rating that high. Absolutely everything is powered by steam, and I think the explanation for why is actually really clever. In a cute amusement park dark ride, a narrator explains that underground Steamland, geothermal chambers boil aquifers to enormous pressures, which forces steam upwards to the surface. This is a really nice little world-building detail that Groening and his writing team could have just skipped, but I think it really demonstrates how much effort they're willing to put into their little details, and speaking of little details, something that Groening is fond of, and which can be found in The Simpsons and Futurama 2, are a lot of little background gags. Many of these are witty statements that are easy to miss, and you have to pause just at the right time to see them correctly, and there are a lot of them in Steamland. Some of them will just be silly puns, or a clever reference that is so obscure only like 10 people might find it funny. The animation is wonderful too. There are a lot of pretty colors and wacky background characters. I love early episodes of The Simpsons, but they were really limited with what resources they had. The inconsistent animation never bothered me personally, but it's a delight to see what Groening and his team can accomplish with a big budget. The matte background paintings are really good too. It really feels like they put a lot of effort and time into making this part of the show really good. Looking at the series as a whole, I do like it a lot. One of the criticisms I have of it is that the story kind of fails to build tension. The show is just too silly to have a story that actually makes you feel afraid that the characters are in trouble, plot armor kind of thing. Another criticism I have is that some of the episodes do drag a bit. Because the show doesn't have to worry about like broadcasting on network television and structuring an episode for advertising breaks, episodes can be any length. Sometimes these episodes can end up being pretty long, and it could probably be trimmed down a bit, maybe. This leads back into my first criticism as well. Some of the action scenes are pointless because the characters are never in any real danger, so I often reach for my phone for another shot of dopamine. I'm such a dopamine addict. I love my phone. I love my Chinese spyware. I love all the funny videos that people make for me, just for me. They don't make them for anyone else. If you like The Simpsons or Futurama, you'll really like this show. Unless you don't like those shows, in which you won't like this show too. Moving on.
Yeah, dreams fulfilled.
I saw one of your cartoons yesterday. Do you just make things up as you go along? Because that's what it felt like.
From the filmmakers of Lord of the Rings, I bring you 2018's Mortal Engines. That's my narrator guy voice. I don't really do a good deep voice. From the film... On the Steamometer, I rated this film as 3 of 4, getting steamy, and is steampunk. Mortal Engines is a quintessential Hollywood movie. It was adapted from a book, in which it deviates significantly. It has bombastic visuals that are largely forgettable. It has multiple experienced screenwriters who produced a dull script. It has a forced love arc that contributes nothing to the story. It has an interesting setting that is poorly explored. It has a big super weapon that just blows stuff up. And, did I miss anything? Oh, there's one more thing. The movie has minions in it.
What about to lose our American deities?
I don't know what they were thinking with that Minions reference. It's like, the joke was dated when the movie came out. I guess no one involved really cared that much. It's probably just a paycheck for them. I mean, I guess I can't blame them, you know, sometimes you just gotta pay the bills. Those mega yachts don't pay for themselves. It's not a bad movie, it's pretty much everything you want. Action, adventure, love, explosions, it's all here. It did very poorly in the box office, and is on Wikipedia's list of biggest box office bombs. The writing and script are largely to blame. People really overuse the insult that this or that was created by AI, but this script really feels like it was created by AI. The film was in development starting around 2016, so it predates AI by about 5 years, but the script is so generic and so cliche. It's honestly painful to watch it. Like, I've seen this exact movie like 100 times.
Take this, and stay out of sight until I give you the signal. What signal? How will I know? Trust me, you'll know.
I mean, they even used a bunch of one-liners too, and they're not good. I've heard them all before.
Your history.
The setting is pretty neat. It's post-apocalyptic, where everyone drives around on giant monolithic machines. They are vague in what exactly powers these big, colossal vehicles, but I guess it's fueled by eating other machines, which is neat, but doesn't really matter except in the beginning of the movie. This consumption of traction cities, as they're called in the movie, operate under the philosophy of municipal Darwinism, which is appropriately evil considering the bad guys are British. The city of London, likely all that's left of England, is now a monster which roams the wasteland in the perpetual search of fuel. They establish that most of Earth is twisted and torn as a result of a world-ending event called the 60-Minute War. For example, a land bridge connects the British Isles to the mainland Europe, and a vast mountain range with a single choke point prevents these machines from venturing into Asia. What's left of Asia has organized itself into the Anti-Tractionist League, static settlements that are opposed to the traction cities. There are lots of really cool world-building elements in this movie that are ultimately wasted on a really bad script, though there is one writing detail which I think is actually really interesting. The main character, Red Bandana Girl, has a past which forced her to stand the run. As we find out, the girl is being chased by an ancient super soldier, the last of his kind. He calls her name and demands that she fulfill the promise that she made to him, a promise to end her pain and become a cyborg herself. But Red Bandana Girl had a change of heart and found a new purpose in life, exacting revenge on the man who killed her mother. This part of the story is really interesting, and perhaps even a bit nuanced, but it's a shame you have to wade through all the other junk to get to it. The super weapon is just a big laser. Ooh, scary. And it's called Medusa, which is not very clever or interesting. There's a generic robot narrator voice that says it out loud, and it isn't very threatening or impressive.
Medusa is live.
The acting is as bland as you can get. I'm guessing everyone there knew what kind of movie they were in and just rolled with it because, hey, it's a paycheck. Don't rock the boat kind of thing. Wait, hold on. I used just roll with it and don't rock the boat in the same sentence. Aren't those kind of contradictory? There's not much to talk about with this movie. I guess if you like big dumb movies with big action scenes, you'll like it, but that's about it.
Dinosaur.
Our next film is 2020's Pupile of Chimney Town. This is a Japanese animated film and is set in an enormous steampunk city. In the opening scene, an asteroid crash lands in the city, and this horrid creature crawls out, stumbling through the sewers until it surfaces and... As it would turn out, our next film is a Japanese animated film for kids. Oh god, on the steamometer, I rated this as 404, hot and steamy, and is steampunk. Oh god. This movie was made for iPad kids, you know, the kinds who are in restaurants who are suffering from late-stage brain rot, children who have such extreme dopamine addictions that their brains are symbiotically linked to their iPads. Most people should not be parents, but I digress. This movie is extremely garish, overwhelmingly vibrant colors that do not synergize with each other at all. The saturation has been cranked to like 1 billion. It's near impossible to focus on any one thing at a time. This is a filmmaking equivalent of a Subway Surfers video stitched together with clips from Chernobyl. The animation is largely 3D, with a few bits being done in 2D. It does that thing that a lot of 3D animation projects are doing now, where they're intentionally slowing down the frame rate to give it that classic animation feel. I like it personally, but it is extremely overdone right now, and everybody's doing it. There's like that weird zombie slaying idol movie that came out recently that did that. I don't know anything about that. I'm not watching that trash. Oh my god, is that a Shadow of Israfel reference?
Oh no! Oh, peculiar!
We're getting separated!
What do you mean we're getting separated? Ah!
What are you doing?
Oh my god! He fell in the lava.
No!
The story is shockingly engaging. In the final act of the movie, a character explains that Chimney Town was founded to solve a world full of conflict and wealth inequality. Things like food and clothing decay, but money never grows old, and because of this it enables a corrupt system where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Chimney Town solved this issue by making money have an expiration date too. Physical currency, shaped like triangles, physically wears down from use until it becomes nothing. And supposedly this prevents the accumulation of wealth? It's a really interesting idea. I'm not sure how that would actually work in reality, but supposedly it makes Chimney Town a utopia. The downside to this utopia, however, is lung cancer. They never say lung cancer, they just call it asthma, which is ridiculous because every building in Chimney Town has a chimney which pours out what I assume to be endless carcinogens. The purpose of these smokestacks is to cloud the sky so people cannot see the outside world, which would encourage them to want to leave and be discovered by the evil banking system which hoards wealth. Not sure if there's any subtext there. Supporting this endeavor are the secret police, referred to as inquisitors. They remove anything heretical, you know what I'm trying to say, and eliminate anybody who speaks the truth about the world. This movie has a fairly complex story, and it's weird to see this type of story in a kids movie, but it is pretty much dumbed down exactly as I explained it to you. I think in the hands of a good writer, you could probably make something really interesting out of this story, but regretfully this movie is about a weird garbage creature and a chimney sweep. There are a few songs in this movie. The first one is a bit of an earworm, but the other songs are your typical mass-produced anime music songs. They're fine, I guess. The characters in this movie are exactly what you'd expect. In my opinion, the only interesting character is the boy's mother. The toxins in the air have made her weak and unable to stand with her own power, and the film doesn't really take any time to explore this. I think it would be an excellent motivation for the main character to want to save her from the toxins in the air and give her a better life outside of Chimney Town, but the boy is instead interested in showing everyone what stars look like. You know, this is fine, it's fine and all, but, you know, your mom's probably gonna die soon, kid, and, you know, the stars are... they're not going anywhere. They're gonna stay right there, but your mom's gonna die in like a week. Get her some fresh air. Crack open the window. If you're an iPad kid, or you know of an iPad kid, or you're a bad parent and you've raised an iPad kid, then this movie is like a gold mine for you. There is a gold mine in the movie. It's more like a crystal mine. There's like a turtle guy there too. I didn't talk about him. Anyway. Well, everyone, I think I did it. I watched every movie, every show, every anime. It's complete. There's nothing more to talk about, nothing more to say. I've exhausted every list, every forum, every wiki in search of steampunk, and there's nothing left to talk about. Nothing at all. Not one word. There is one more thing to talk about. I have one or two things to say about Arcane, but this video is already too long. I plan to release that video eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later. It's not going to be tomorrow, unless you're watching this video in the future, and that video is also done, or maybe I never did it, I don't know. I'll try to do it. I have lots of things to say, and it's going to take a long time to make, unless I say nothing and only talk about one thing, which will be faster, but less impactful, and I want to aim for impactfulness. Thank you everyone for watching this video. If you noticed any audio or video problems, or have any suggestions to improve the fidelity of this video, please leave a comment below. The mic I'm using, for example, is from the 1970s, and has really bad hiss and hum. There's like capacitors inside that need to be fixed or something replaced. It's not really an issue when you're recording to a cassette tape, but it does become a bit problematic when you're recording to digital. Oh wait, it's actually in front of me right now. It's like, I have a prop ready. Look. See? I'll make one of those weird ASMR girls. Mommy ASMR. Mommy loves you. You're a good boy. If you like this video, you can press the like button. If you dislike this video, you're a bad person and you should go away. I don't know if those buttons do anything, but that's what YouTubers always say at the end of their videos, so that's what I'm saying now too. You can also subscribe if you want, and all these things together will make me really happy. I love to be the center of attention. Please give me more attention. And in return, I will make more videos about things. And you can follow me at these places here if you want to. You don't have to. Coming soon, Steampunk Part 2 - Arcane 2 video. Bye.